Call the Selectmen's meeting to order for December 18th. We have reason for non-public tonight.
We do personnel. I don't know if you have something too.
Okay, the first thing on our agenda are minutes, November 6th. Somebody want to make a motion?
Move to approve the November 6th minutes as written.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. December 4th. You want to make a motion on those?
Move to approve the December 4th minutes as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next thing is temporary event permits. Great Waters Music Festival to host a folk festival at Cape Park, South Main Street on Saturday, June 27th, 2020 at 3:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. Various performers, free and open to the public.
Hey, David.
I guess you're going to speak to this.
I will.
You must be.
Okay. Go right ahead.
Okay. So,
You just state your name for the record.
okay. My name is Steve Bush.
Thank you.
Town of Tuftonboro. And here representing the Great Waters Music Festival for this event. June 27th, basically from 3:30 to 10 o'clock. It'll be free to anyone who wants to come. We have 4 groups coming, and it's a rebirth of the folk festival, which a lot of people have missed in Wolfeboro. So it's our 25th year in Wolfeboro, and it's our gift to the community. I think I gave you a description of the event in terms of we'd have to access the park about 1 p.m. to get things set up. And also on the map I provided you, we would need 3 parking spaces for the groups to unload and reload. We would not take that 1 parking spot that is handicap accessible. That would remain open to the public. I also mentioned in there that we didn't know yet what the electrical needs would be, but that we would, once we found out what the groups needed, if it wasn't enough there, we would work with the electric company, and any costs involved in that we would take on. I don't know what else to tell you.
There were a couple of notes on the application from the town planner. One is to trash to be removed
Correct.
off-site, and then also any tents, if you should have them, need to be, have the stickers on them approved by the state.
Any what?
Any of the tents, if you have any,
We're not-
to have a compliance sticker on them.
You're talking about tents?
Yes.
We aren't going to have any tents. The backup is if the weather is bad. We're going to go to Anderson Hall.
That's right.
And we've secured that with Brewster.
Okay. Okay, are there anybody from the public wish to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I noticed that the insurance policy runs out on 6/07, so we need a new one that does 6/27,
Okay.
or they typed in the wrong date, I can't tell, but that needs to be updated.
Work on that tomorrow. Cheryl Andrews is the executive director, so I'll be in touch with her on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we accept the Great Waters Music Festival, host a folk festival in Cape Park and South Main Street, Saturday, June 27th, 2020 at 3:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. with various performers free and open to the public.
A second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
That was a tough one.
That was tough. Thank you very much. I hope you won't be offended if I find my way back to Tuftonboro.
No.
We thank you.
Don't do that.
Okay, next is another public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 18th, 2019 at 6:30 in the Great Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, for the acceptance of an unanticipated funds for an amount awarded that is less than $10,000 in accordance with RSA 30:95-small b 3 small a, accept the donation in the amount of $493.32 from the Friends of Abenaki, the purchase of a compressor at Abenaki. Anybody here to speak to that? Go ahead.
Sorry. Christine Collins, Parks and Rec Director. This is, it's either the pump or compressor. It's one we already had that we were updating for that building. So we finally got that last piece to the puzzle. So we're just working on that. And they wanted to donate.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak to this hearing? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Somebody want to make a motion?
I'll do that. Move to accept the unanticipated funds for the amount awarded is less than $10,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95B3 to accept donation in the amount of $94.9332. The Friends of Abenaki for the purchase of the compressor at Abenaki.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 18, 2019, 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, for the acceptance of taxidermy collection valued at more than $10,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95-small b 3 small a to accept the donation from the estate of Bruce G. Lauber. Somebody speaking to that?
Hi, I'm Alana Albee, the director of the Libby Museum.
Kari Lauber.
I'd like to say with some pleasure that we have been offered a collection of over 30 items from the Bruce Lauber estate, and this is Carrie, his daughter. Bruce, as many of you will know, passed away about a year ago and was a local resident. He has a beautiful collection of many items which the museum doesn't have at present, so it's a substantial addition to what we have, and we would be very pleased to add it to our collection. We've provided the selectmen with a detailed list of the fish and animals, as well as the birds in the collection. If you have any questions, Kari is here too.
Okay, the only question I have is that we don't have a space that's heated and air conditioning to accept these. We don't have a place to put them in those conditions, at least not yet. So I'm not sure how that will work. Whether whether Carrie still wants to donate the collection, knowing that we take the collection, for instance, now, we're going to have to put it in cold storage.
Mr. Chairman, I had a motion in which that we would accept it and that we wouldn't take possession of it until such time we had a museum with museum quality environment. And I have that, I wrote that.
Yes,
Does that work for you?
That's correct.
Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Could I add to that as well? And thank you. And I agree with the motion that says until we have a museum that has conditioned space, really, we shouldn't accept it. It's not fair to do that. If between now and the time we have a museum with conditioned space, you find another person to donate it to, we would regretfully, want you to do that, because we still haven't settled on whether we have a Libby museum with conditioned space. Okay, just clarity. I think it's important for everybody to know that.
Yeah, I think that should be known up front. I don't have any issue with accepting the mounts and stuff at all. Of course, on Bruce's behalf, but.
If I could just add a couple of things. It's unusual for the Libby to come to the selectmen when we have a donation. As you know, we get donations frequently, but it's the size of the collection that warranted the presentation tonight. But I did also want to say that the Libby has been invited by the Laconia Library, Public Library, which is a large, beautiful building like this, to have an exhibit from January through to the beginning of June, and we will be using and working with Kerry to use the Lauber collection to put it on display as an example of the kind of things that we have at the Libby, and that will then enable us not to have to remove items from the museum itself, and it will promote the Libby Museum on the other side of the lake.
Okay.
How about I make
Make a
my,
motion.
yeah, I move to support the acceptance of the Lauber 30-plus animal taxidermy collection under the condition that the town will not take possession of the collection until it has a museum with a museum-quality environment.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Kara.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is our bulk vote, which is the weekly manifest, intent to cut, property tax credit exemptions, equalization preliminary study, raffle permit. Anybody have any questions on any of those?
I'll make a motion to accept the bulk vote.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next, board appointment. Nancy Hirschberg to the Energy Committee.
Hi.
Hi.
So I don't know the process here. So I would like to be on the Energy Committee.
And I think some of the history is you were on the Energy Committee.
Yes, I was the original chair of the committee, and I have been attending meetings without being a member, and I work in sustainability, and I would like to rejoin the committee.
Mr. Chairman, Nancy Hirschberg's name will be alongside of a lot of great accomplishments that have taken place in the field of the Energy Committee and things we've done. So I think it's great that you want to re-up and be a part of this.
Are you making that a motion?
I do. I move to appoint Nancy Hirschberg as a member of the Energy Committee.
And I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
You're in.
You're in again. Okay, next, we take them individually? You want to?
Yeah, let's take these individually. So with the hiring of a new fire chief, we really need to appoint that individual as our forest fire warden. And the chief is here this evening.
Are you going to make a motion to that effect? Or?
I'll make a motion for that effect.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
The chief.
And the second one is emergency management director. It's really a conflict with the town manager's role. It's really part of the fire chief's job description, and we'd like to have him appointed as the emergency management director for the town of Wolfeboro.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, new business, commercial vessel landing permit for the Winnipesaukee Bell.
Evening, Mr. Chairman. John MacDonald.
Okay, they have a permit application. The fees have been paid. And this is from May to June, July 1st to September 7th, September 8th to October 12th.
Yes.
That's what we have on the sheet here. Anything you want to add to that, John?
No, just want to thank the board and the residents of the town for the opportunity to use the town docks to pick up our passengers. Really appreciate it.
I just have one question, or not a comment. Thank you for filling it out all together. Most of them don't put the sign that's going to go down at the docks.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yes, and I appreciate that, because I
You're
know...
welcome, thank you.
And if I could, last year there was another applicant, and I think the Winnie Bell team, you being the leader of it, were extremely flexible in providing calendar dates and all of that, and I'm kind of late in thanking you, but thank you for doing that. I think you run a classy operation, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I move we accept the commercial vessel landing permit for the Winnipesaukee Bell.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
John.
Thanks, John.
Next on the agenda is the Wolfeboro Trolley Company.
Good evening. Kathy Fairman-Eaton, the owner of the Wolfeboro Trolley Company, and come before you tonight to ask for a municipal sign to be placed down at the entrance to McManus Road to indicate where we will be running a park and ride. Just a little background on that. You have the letter that I wrote, but I just would highlight the facts that we have parking situation downtown, and I'm proposing, Molly and I think it's time to bring another trolley into town to help her out to run a shuttle from Kingswood downtown. They've got hundreds of parking spaces up down there, and we don't have enough down here. And if we run every half hour, starting at 8 in the morning until 6 at night, we should be able to keep some cars out of downtown. And we're going to give it a shot this next year. I have an agreement in place. The school board has been wonderfully supportive, and we have as you have a copy of it, that's all ready to go. And we will be, hopefully, we have a trolley lined up. We had the opportunity to get one, which is what prompted me to decide to do that this year. That, and the touch of success we had the 4th of July. I had people riding the trolley who had Googled and looked online for a park and ride to come to the parade. People I asked who told me that on the trolley. I had local citizens as well, but we had out-of-towners who had looked for a park and ride in order to park their car and go downtown. Those are the primary people we're going after at first. And when the trolley came here 32 years ago, brought here by some directors at the chamber, they were in hopes that business people would use that trolley and leave their cars in a parking spot. But Molly's never been really reliable that way. In order to get people back at the end of the day, we never put together a deal with the school district. So revisiting that now, that is an option, but again, that is something hopeful that maybe some folks will consider to do that. Anybody who buys a sign on the trolley will be given some free season passes for their employees, so we're going to encourage that. But our primary goal is to reach the visitor who is coming to town for the day, so they can park there, go downtown, and spend all day, ride all 4 boats, eat ice cream at all the places, do shopping, and then go back and get their car. That's what we're going to try to do. So really appreciate that sign. Do you have any questions? I know you have my letter.
Will there be more than one drop-off point downtown?
We'll be going to the railroad station, the town docks, and then back. We will stop Molly's tours used to go all the way to Kingswood, stopping at Windrifter and Crescent Lake. She will now turn around at the Clark House, and so the other trolley we won't go off, but we will stop for people at the Windrifter or Crescent Lake who want to get on the trolley at those. But we're just going to go back and forth. But we will go to those 2 locations.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to thank Kathy for helping the town out on the 4th of July. We needed another way to get people into town, and you stepped up, and that was really great. I also like your letter. You pointed out all the parts of the master plan that this address, and I think that shows that it was already identified as a need in this community. So thank you for doing that.
We found that in 2014. I'm on the Economic Development Committee, and we did a survey and surveyed 96 businesses in town, and at that time, the top 2 things that they felt needed most improving was parking and traffic congestion. In 5 years, it hasn't gotten any better. It's gotten worse. This last year, I felt it was the worst I've seen. driving in town for 4 or 5 hours in a day, you get a picture real quick in terms of what the problem is. And if you're a trolley driver trying to find a place to park to change shifts at 1:30, you really know how hard it is. So anyway, you have lots of things to do tonight.
Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, can I,
Yeah, and then I have a question.
Kathy, thank you for doing it. And you're always so enthusiastic about these things. I just asked 2 favors. Well, I shouldn't use those words. You asked me a favor. 2 things to consider, and you don't have to tell us now. One is, because it's a new idea, how are you going to plan to promote it? And I think that the Chamber and other people, you noodle that one through, because promoting it is going to get people there. And I'd encourage social media to do that. And then the second is, I'm sure you'll keep, some kind of record of the volumes of people that are going to hop on the trolley and come into town, because I know our friends in the Energy Committee, you pointed it out in our, we need to get less, cars sitting in traffic just puffing away. So if you could give us some volumes kind of next year of what you did, that would be a good thing for everybody. So thank you very much for doing what you did.
And in answer to your question, that yes, of course, social media, as I said, that's where somebody found the Park and Ride.
Exactly.
We had put it up on our Facebook page, and that's where they'd pick that up. So we will be doing that as well as in all the advertising. One reason why we have to do it now is because of our advertising deadlines that come up with things like the Lakes Region Tourism Association. But Park and Ride with our little logo was something you hope that nobody can miss.
Yeah.
This time. Yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is the town's going to put up the sign.
That's the plan. Matt and Jim and Dave Ford, we've been working on that. It's not even going to have our name on it. It's going to say Park and Ride. It's going to have the trolley logo, and it's going to have an arrow. That's what it looks like. So exactly which side of McManus Road, we still have to figure that out, but whatever Dave Ford thinks is the best place, that's what we're going to do.
I'm willing to make a motion. Mm-hmm. I move that we permit the town to put up a Park and Ride sign at McManus Road for the trolley service coming this summer.
Right. Just July and August.
Second.
What's the name of the new trolley?
Oh,
She doesn't want to
what
let that out.
everybody wants to know.
It's a secret.
You have to have
That's
a
all everybody-
contest.
We're going to have a big announcement about that very shortly.
Okay.
So we wanted to wait until tonight.
David cynical.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Kathy.
Thanks,
Next
Kathy.
on our agenda is the town audit presentation.
Good evening. My name is Tim Green. I'm representing Robertson Green tonight. I'm here to present the audit results for the year ended December 31st, 2018. Usually I come in the summer, but this time it happened to be in December. I'm sure you all know why, but we've had a few different employees that we worked with throughout the process, and we've had some turnover in staff. So that, as well as just a delay in the OPEB reporting, which comes from a third-party actuary study, that all kind of corroborated and created this slight delay, but that's not the standard practice, and we hope it doesn't happen again. So once again, I believe this is the 5th or 6th year that we've presented this report, and I'm pleased to announce again that you've got a clean opinion across all your opinion units, and that's reflected in the first 2 pages of this report. One item to note within this auditor's opinion is you can see we emphasize that you changed an accounting principle. That again reflects the OPEB. You adopted GASB 75, which was the first year you were required to do so. You were always reporting OPEB information, but GASB 75 requires you to report the full liability on your books. So there was a big restatement of your beginning balance reflecting that full liability, as well as some changes in calculations that your actuary has done, resulting in a large liability sitting on your governmental activity statements. We've discussed this before. This represents 2 items. It represents the implicit rate that your employees earn while they're working to be in a pooled health insurance plan. It's not a specific benefit that someone receives as a retired. It's just a benefit of having a pooled rate. So you have a lower rate that were you to buy health insurance all by yourself on the market without being in a blended pool, you'd have a much higher rate. So your GASB now requires a calculation to say how that's being earned as you work, because as you work, you're essentially earning that benefit for the future. That, and then the other portion is the medical subsidy that flows through the retirement system. They've broken out between the pension that you've been reporting for a number of years and the medical subsidy, which I believe is not, new employees don't earn that, but that is something that was existing employees. So as that, as those employees phase out, that liability may go away, but that's years down the road. So that, the retirement system figure is calculated by the retirement system actuaries. Your implicit rates numbers are calculated by your actuary. GASB 75 does require more frequent updating of those figures. So that's something you'll be aware of. There is some cost, obviously, associated with hiring an actuary to do those studies every year and to update them every year. Having said that, I'm going to try and hit some of the financial highlights. I either go long or go short and go fast. So kind of just feel free to either interrupt or ask me all your questions at the end.
Yes, you just tell us what page you're on. It'll make it easier for us.
Absolutely. So I'll start with Exhibit 1, page 13 and 14. Basically, this is your statement of net position. So this is a town-wide exhibit. This shows governmental activities and it shows business type activities as a whole. You have 4 business type activities, as you know. You have a water, sewer, electric department, and the Pop Whalen Arena. So those are combined into the business type activities, and all your other funds are combined into your governmental activities. This also is on the full accrual basis. So on page 14, you can see that the net position of the town as of December 31st, 2018, for your governmental activities, you had a total net position of just over $29 million. You actually had a deficit unrestricted net position of just under $5 million, and you can see the bulk of your, the rest of the balance was in your net investment in capital assets. So that figure represents the value, less depreciation of your capital assets, less all the debt related to those same capital assets. So the reason why you would have a deficit unrestricted position basically represents OPEB and pension liabilities, which you have no asset related to that, so it's just a big hit on your books.
So just back on page 13, we've graduated. We've gone over $100 million in assets. Is that fair to say?
Combined, yep, that's accurate.
Graduated from, we're now not a small town.
On page 14, too, you can see your total net position for your business type activities is just over $30 million. Of that, about $20 million represents your net investment in capital assets, and you have an unrestricted net position for those funds in just over $10 million. Turning the page to 15, Exhibit 2, I just point out this shows the change from the beginning of the year to the end of the year for those same town-wide exhibits. So the net change in your net position for your governmental activities, you can see the third line from the bottom was just over $3 million from your restated beginning balance of just over $25 million, which actually was restated downwards, as I said, because of the OPEB liability that was added to your books. So you see how you get to your ending net position of $29 million. The total of your business type activities, you had an increase of just about $1 million for those funds combined. Exhibit 3 on page 16, this is your fund exhibits. This is the modified accrual basis, so it's focused on current assets and current liabilities, not any long-term activity. You can see here that we have total assets for your general fund. This also, reports major funds and an aggregate column for non-major. Major versus non-major is a financial calculation based off of your total assets and total liabilities, total revenues, and total expenditures. Basically, it represents 5% of governmental or 10% of governmental and 5% of total governmental and business type combined. So if they are above that threshold, they get reported as major funds. It can change every year. Typically, it's basically the same funds every year. So for Wolfeboro, you report the general fund as always, and you report a capital projects fund. This fund represents Projects that are funded either through bonds and notes or a portion through grants, such as like a bridge that you just voted in 2019, which would be 80-20 or 75-25. So if you have a grant portion and a bond or notes portion, you essentially have a non-lapsing appropriation for that without having to specifically call it that. So it's easiest accounting-wise to segregate those into capital project funds. Now, if a project is being funded by one of your enterprise funds, it just goes right into that fund. So this is truly just funds that are, again, funded through bonds and notes or grants with, potentially a portion through taxation, but in those instances, whatever was voted from taxes is just transferred right to that fund that year that it was voted. So it's basically, you're no longer carrying that in the general fund. So total fund balance in the general fund was just about $5.5 million. You have 5 classifications. You have a minor non-spendable balance representing your prepaid items and your tax-deeded property that you're holding for resale. You have some restricted funds, almost $500,000. This represents the library that for reporting purposes under a certain GASB standard, it is combined because basically funding for the library is majority supported by taxation. So by definition, you can't report it as a special revenue fund.
So Tim, that restricted account, 457,000, whatever it would be, even over on the other side, 684. That is cash that we have that is restricted in use. Is that correct?
That would be. I'm not. If that was, say, as an example, if that were all the library, I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head. If it's
it doesn't
library,
matter. I'm just asking, is that?
It's your fund balance for that fund, basically.
But it's cash we have, but restricted in use.
It's your assets minus liabilities. So it's. Yeah, I don't know what your liabilities are, for example. So you could have liabilities as well. So
where do pledges show up?
Pledges are not reported in governmental.
You don't show pledge receivables or anything of that nature?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Committed fund balance, about $2.5 million. That represents expendable trust funds, again, combined for reporting purposes only. Assigned fund balance is open purchase orders and other encumbrances, typically. You're right around $400,000. And you're left with an unassigned fund balance of just over $2 million. Also, the capital project fund you can see is in a deficit position. This is a result of not yet borrowing for a couple projects until 2019.
I had a question about that. This is the minimum fund balance that you're talking about, this number here of a couple of $1 million?
That's your unassigned.
Yeah. You said in your commentary that we strive to have a 10% fund balance, and I kind of just made a question mark in my mind. I don't know if that is, in fact, our policy. I'm not sure. And I've looked around, and all I can find is something going back, I think, Linda, 2012, 2011?
As I recall, there was a warrant article that said that we could not carry more than 10% in our unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, I think
that's what you have noted in here.
Right. Well,
that is not binding. That is the will of the voter.
Yeah, and maybe it's just wording, but in your management note, it says strive to have a 10% fund balance. I'm not sure that's the right words.
I think these are your words, so I believe I was quoting the warrant article wording.
Okay.
But
we should strive to have a 10% fund balance.
Yeah, I don't think, right, like you say, that's not.
Which is different, I think, than what Linda has.
Yeah, I think we can pull that warrant article, but Suzanne's here, and I think it was once we hit 10%, the rest of it was.
Go over it.
Right. Yeah, but it didn't say that we had to maintain a 10%.
Right. Well,
okay.
Right.
Good news is we have a healthy and growing unassigned fund balance.
Yeah, and I've looked at, I ran those numbers, and there's multiple ways to calculate this, so it's unfortunate. If you were to take the DRA's calculation that they do when they set the tax rate, you're looking at about 7.35%.
That's where we are, right? Yep,
That's correct.
If you look at a percentage of your general fund operating budget, so when they segregate all your enterprise funds, you're looking at 13.66%.
Yeah.
If you were to add in the school, county, and precinct portions, you're looking at 6.88%. So it fluctuates. You're over and under depending on how you look at it.
The good news on a dollar basis is we have a growing unassigned fund balance, which is
Yeah, I mean,
a good thing to do.
It's your largest since at least 2011, so.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, so I left off Exhibit 3. I'll just jump to Exhibit 4. This shows the reconciliation. So when I say your total fund balance on Exhibit 3 was $6,700,000, and your total net position back on Exhibit 1 was $29 million, you can see how you get between those two figures. The bulk of that, again, about $40 million of your net capital assets. You have almost $20 million in long-term liabilities, and another $1.5 million related to deferrals for pensions and OPEB. So that's your reconciliation between the two different statements. Page 18 is Exhibit 5. This is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So just pointing out, general fund, the first column, you had an increase in your total fund balance of about $1.5 million, whereas the capital project decreased by about $800,000. Again, as you record expenditures as they incur, you don't record a receivable for bonds and notes, even though you know that's how you're funding these expenditures. So until you borrow and receive those funds, you run a deficit. And then the total other governmental funds, again, increased by just about $50,000. In Exhibit 6, another reconciliation. Again, it shows you how you go from a net change in your governmental fund balance of about $700,000 to the net change in your net position, which was over $3 million. And you can see all the differences. So when you capitalize capital assets, you remove an expenditure and record an asset. So that was just over $2 million of capital assets. So that increased your net position. When you pay off your debt, you make your annual debt payments, that's an expenditure in your general fund. Governmental activities, that's just a reduction in liability. It's not an expense. So that was another $600,000. So that basically shows how you increased from $700,000 to $3.2 million. After that, I don't need to really review much. Exhibit 8 on 21, page 21, excuse me, is a breakdown of your enterprise funds. So it shows by fund the assets, deferred outflows of resources, your liabilities, your deferred inflows of resources, and your total net position. You can see the results of the funds themselves. Exhibit 9, page 22. You can see the water and electric department had positive operating income, whereas the sewer department had an operating loss, and the Papa Whalen Ice Arena had an operating loss. After non-operating revenues, you can see that, the non-operating revenue, water department had interest expense and transfers out, so without any non-operating revenue, whereas sewer department had the operating transfer in, that is appropriated every year, an operating transfer out, interest expense, interest income. So your net change in fund balances for the water, electric, and sewer were all positive, whereas Pop Whalen was a decrease of about $30,000. Exhibit 10 on page 23 is a statement of cash flows. Goes without saying, further information for your use. I'll point out page 33. This is a GAAP to budgetary basis reconciliation for your general fund. So when you're looking through these financials and you go to Exhibit 7, for example, or Exhibit 21, you see a fund balance figure of $2.7 million, an unassigned fund balance figure, except that the number I just reported on Exhibit 3 was just over $2 million. The difference being budgetary versus GAAP basis. So you can see that for your unassigned fund balance, there's a basis difference for deferred tax revenue. This represents receivables and revenue that you have not collected within 60 days from year end. So accounting rules say if you haven't received that money within 60 days, you really can't use it. You can't count it. So on the budgetary basis, however, the state, and I kind of tell you this every year, the state says you have the ability to collect those taxes through the deed process ultimately. It takes you 3 years or longer. However, you do have a way to capture that, setting aside abatements, which you account for an overlay. So therefore, it is revenue you will recognize. So when they consider the tax rate, they don't need you to defer that.
Sure.
The last page I will point out, page 63, this is Exhibit 21. This is your schedule of changes in unassigned fund balance. So you can see that you started the year, January 1st, 2018, with an unassigned fund balance of $1,567,000. You had a revenue surplus. Your actual revenues came in higher than your estimated revenues of just over $600,000. You also had an unexpended balance of your appropriations of $572,000. So you had a net budget surplus of $1,182,000. You had an increase in non-spendable fund balance of about $45,000. So adding those together, you can see that's how you get to your ending unassigned fund balance of $2,704,000. Last page of the report is my management letter. I had no significant items to report. I did report a recommendation on accounting for police grants. Basically, it's my opinion that what you've been doing in the past, and it's kind of been a past practice, that because of the materiality level of your grants, it's not significant in the grand scheme of things. Basically, the town was just looking at matching. They said, okay, how much came in during the year from the state or feds for these grants? We're going to match. We're just going to pull out expenditures into our grants fund and match that. I think it's just good practice to just record it as it goes. So I know that from what I see on my side.
What does that mean, recorded as it goes?
So if you're doing your patrol or whatever the grant is for, just as an example, you know what the hours are. You know, basically, I say when you put in that request to the state or whoever's going to pay those funds out, and you give them that accounting that says on X, this day this person worked these many hours, and we're asking for this much money, book that as your expense and your revenue as a receivable. And then when it comes in, then that allows you to track maybe something hasn't been paid, or you got a different amount than you were expecting, and it might trigger some more. If there was an error from the state side or your side or whatever it is, that accounting for it that way will allow you to catch those items.
In other words, we're going to itemize an account for each patrol
Well, when it's a grant
when it's
fund.
completed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, those are part of existing reporting as far as what I've seen for at least for certain grants. I know there's a specific form the state requires from everyone, so a copy of that can go to accounting and you can make an entry to record that. It's not, it's not a whole separate line of action, so. We'll take any questions you have now at this point.
Nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I had a couple.
You go.
So in your letter, you mentioned that you had commentary on investment policy and concentration of risk. You also had a commentary on custodial credit risk, which kind of lit me up. So we have an investment policy, and it may not encompass what you would normally or customarily take a look at. So we're going to give you a copy of our policy. Would you take a look at it? And is that something you could just simply get back to us and say, here's some areas you might want to strengthen in the investment? Is that okay to do?
Sure.
To do that? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so concentration and credit risk, as it describes, it just means, do you have limits on how large of an investment you want? Right. Now, you have to remember, too, that this is all investments of the town. So town investment policy, trustees, a trust fund investment policy, and they have the bulk of the...
They may have their own policies.
They do. They are required to, yeah. So it's kind of, you as selectmen, you actually have further restrictions by RSA for types of investments you can have. Yeah. So trustees have a little more, prudent investor rule. They have a little more leeway. So as far as concentration, that's kind of what are you comfortable with? Custodial credit risk basically means, and it really affects the trustees a little more than you. If they have that outside investment company holding those funds and deciding essentially based on the agreement what funds to purchase, there's always that risk that that investment company goes out of business.
I think the number you used, I don't recall it, but I think it was 5 million on an 8 million
Right.
tab. So the reason I bring it up is because you mentioned it in your note, and I appreciate you doing that. And the other reason I bring it up is, we're on a $100 million balance sheet. And I think those are the kinds of things I'd start looking at, and if you can help us there, that would be really great.
Certainly.
Okay. The other question I had, if I could, and I know you can't comment on internal controls per your letter, but did you find anything that kind of looked goofy?
No, I can't. I mean, I think I would have put it in
Goofy
here.
is I don't know what the term goofy means.
Not
Did you find
a
anything that you
technical
kind of go,
term,
oh, that doesn't, did you find anything?
No.
Good, thank you.
No, I'm fine. I'll take care of him. That goofy
Thank you, Tim.
question.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for it.
Goofy, huh?
Goofy,
Goofy.
Disney.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay. Next on our agenda is continuation of snowmobile trail to Dockside, Chamber.
Late breaking news from Chris Alden.
Hello, Mary DeVries, Executive Director of the Wolfeboro Area Chamber of Commerce. We did it. We had success last year after years of researching this project and then planning for the trial year. The snow conditions and ice conditions came together this past winter, and we were able to actually present that trial year of connecting the existing snowmobile trail that ends at Bridge Falls Path to Lake Winnipesaukee. And it was very exciting to see the level of activity, just heightened level of activity in Wolfeboro during the winter months. And Mr. Chairman, could I just quickly pass out a picture, just as an example?
Thanks.
No. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, you can have mine. I'll
We made an important decision to the benefit of the businesses in the community. Last year, there was a noticeable increase in foot traffic, and we were able to quickly identify where those people were coming from by them carrying their snowmobile helmets with them. And there's definitely an extra layer of gear that you put on when you're riding on a snowmobile, so they had those snowmobile suits on as well. Our Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Committee has continued to focus on the connecting the land to the lake over all of these years, because we feel strongly that doing so creates the opportunity to bring more people into Wolfeboro in the winter, which is critical. Our residents and visitors really enjoy and should be able to continue to count on Wolfeboro being a vibrant community, and that is reflective of, in large part, of the restaurants and the shops that stay open year-round here. And our chamber believes we should do everything as a collective community that we can to support those businesses. And this snowmobile connecting trail really helps to do just that, because the businesses stay open year-round, but they also employ our residents year-round. And it just is a very good example of everyone working together. We are fortunate to have a very committed Wolfeboro Snowmobile Club, and we have members of the club here tonight, including Kyle Williams. They are committed to continuing to maintain the snowmobile trail and just respond with our help as well in whatever the town needs to make improvements, because again, we only have this one trial year. So we understand that it is a challenging project, so we want to make sure we address those challenges. I would also like to just read a statement that was given to me from Brewster Academy. Brewster Academy has worked for many years with the Wolfeboro Snowmobile Club in oversight of the trails that run through our campus. They have been a thoughtful and responsive organization to work with and have always shared our focus on student and community safety as a priority. I want to talk a little bit about a couple concerns that I'm aware of as well. The handicapped parking. Again, there's been years of research to get to this point, and if we can come up with a better way at placement, or to make that work for the town, we certainly will do that. We did think of one space that hadn't been used during the snowmobile trail yet, and that is, and I'm not an expert on this, of course, but I just thought I'd throw this out there, that the handicapped space at the sort of corner in front of the post office at the corner of Glendon and Main Street, maybe that is, it has the platform curve, maybe that would be better than what was used last year. I only wanted to mention that, but again, I wouldn't know on that. We also know that there are a lot of noises and different odors that a snowmobile machine brings to the street, and certainly residents living in the downtown area, they always year-round experience unique sounds and odors, and there's just the operation of the machine. Signage. I think if there's any need for additional signage on the trail itself, as far as parking or not parking, we can work on creating the signs. There's small signs that would go right on the trail, and I know the Snowmobile Club will help to make sure those are put up in place, and we can work on that. Trying to think of anything else that has come to my attention or to our economic development's attention. We just are asking you to please continue to keep Wolfeboro Bay open and the town open as an inviting destination during the winter months, so that we present ourselves in that way year-round. And I also wanted to just quote, I guess I'll finish up with something I heard just last night in this room at a planning board meeting. It was on a topic completely unrelated to this, but someone said, Wolfeboro's shorefront is the economic powerhouse for the town. And we certainly believe that that is also the case in the winter. And we ask that we have completed the trial and that we continue to move forward with having the trail available in future years, including this upcoming months. And I don't know if you have any questions or...
Well, I also know that there is a letter here from Chris Algren. I think we all have it. Basically saying the same thing as far as business and keeping this thing going. It has to do, obviously, with shutting down the bubblers and stuff on the dock so that would freeze in like it shows in this picture you have. So that's in the record here as well. Okay, does anybody have any questions while Mary's there?
I have some comments.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm in support of the snowmobile trail. I think Wolfeboro is trying real hard to be a four-season recreational town, and this is one of the major winter recreations. I was part of the business expansion and retention survey, and out of that survey came a request for special events, and I have headed that special event committee. We tried twice to get Fisherville up and running, but last year we didn't have anybody who chaired this. This would be a perfect place coming down that snowmobile trail. I am putting on with a great group of people. Last night, Wolfeboro moving Wolfeboro to be that place to come for events. I did take the time to walk around and talk to the business owners, and they felt that that brought more people to town and that they did have some sales. One woman said, well, we don't see them that often, but it'd be a cold day. They come in for hats and gloves that they have not brought. I think it adds to our recreational environment of our town. I would like to see no parking signs, so snowmobiles do not park on the trail. I think that just brings all the smells into businesses. And I'd like us to look at a date where it starts and a date when it ends. So if the ice is ready, we don't put it up before January 15th, and we get it down March 15th. That is really a two-month span. The other thing that I ask that the town should do is that they move the snowmobile trail exit far enough away from the crosswalks, so every time somebody goes off, they don't put snow on the crosswalks, and that we're able to keep those crosswalks clear. So those are my important things. I think it was wonderful to have that. I mean, I can remember as a kid, they had a windsurfing contest out on Lake Winnipesaukee, and we came and everybody walked out onto the ice, and this is the same kind of atmosphere.
Anybody else? Brad?
Yeah, no, last couple of years, last year being the first year we actually were able to do this as a trial type thing to see how it was going to work out and stuff, and it seems like, you know, with the pictures and stuff that we've got people, you know, using it, and I think each year we'll probably get more and more. Some of the pictures I'm sure you've probably seen too from Mr. Sims had provided and stuff there, and, you know, with the going along in front of the condo properties opposite your chamber office. And I always had, even last year, I had a concern about going down and along beside the post office there. My thought would be, because we're doing this on just a trial last year, maybe do another trial this year, but shifting the trail to the other side of the road, so it goes, so it wouldn't be inconveniencing the condo property there, because they can't use the parking spaces in front of the railroad station anyway, because there's only one lane there now. And then also going down Central Ave by the post office, where everybody's parking parallel on the other side now, where the diagonal spaces are painted in there. So the drivers are all opening the doors out into the traffic and stuff. So if we moved it to the other side, at least they'd be parking along where they'd be getting out of the cars on a sidewalk area there. You still have the same amount of parking, really, in either way there, or you lose one space where you have your entrance to the back of the post office. So I just want to throw that out for comment, see what the board thought about that, or any feedback from Mary on that too, if that would be a consideration to run another trial like that too, to see which one might work best.
So, hang on just a minute. Anything else?
Just without right now going into a lot of detail on that, again, we actually, with town staff, with Snowmobile Club, members of the business community, our economic development committee, this is over years. We walked it, we drew maps, we looked at the traffic, the parking spaces, we looked at the best possible safety scenario when you're dealing with snowmobile trails, and this is our recommendation. And as far as building trails, I would lean to the Snowmobile Club for that piece of it. And we also looked at the overall picture of the goal to connect the land to the lake, and knowing that we wouldn't be able to address each individual concern, whether it's from there are businesses along the road and residents, there are apartments in some of those commercial buildings, so there's more residents, and we just did the best we could in order to make the trail work. And this is what we had last year is what we determined to be the best.
I think the issues I've heard, I don't know what you brought up, Mary, and thanks for bringing them up. rather than having us discover them. There is a it doesn't look good issue. There is a it takes up parking space issue. It's noisy, smelly, late night issue. And I kind of agree with, and last year I went back and looked at my notes from our trial meeting, and we were going to get some data, and I think you're just simply, you're telling us that you saw more business, so I guess that has fulfilled my requirement or request for data. I kind of agree with Linda. A little, we're probably going to inconvenience some folks. We're trying to, and I agree, we're trying to promote a around the season event calendar here, which is good. I kind of liked Chris Olgren's letter, which gave us all an opportunity to imagine what could happen if we someday had some events out on the ice. If we could only hope that the ice would freeze. I just think that having a more defined when it starts and when it stops and hours of operation would help me feel a little more comfortable about this. And how it gets laid out, I'm not here to design trails. I'm not smart enough to do that. Whatever the right design model needs to be, we follow it. But I'd like to see more definition around what day does it begin, what day does it stop, and maybe hours of operation. That would be helpful.
Some of that's going to be determined by Mother Nature too. So
Yes.
We can have same as some of these other things. We have rain dates, or we have whatever. It's kind of hard to do that. Anybody here have any more questions right now?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
You want a motion?
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, okay.
There's going to be some other people.
Okay, you're going to let comments? Okay.
I am Kyle Williams. I'm a resident of Tuftonboro. I am the trail administrator for the Wolfeboro Snowmobile Club. We did see a better increase in snowmobile uses in downtown, to the point on our social media, people were asking, hey, is the trail open downtown yet? Is the trail open? Is the trail open? We have to keep telling them, no, be patient. We're working with the town. So it has been a better increase. But I do kind of agree with Brad with maybe moving the trail to lessen the confusion and the complaints of parking, particularly for the handicap at the post office. I think if you do on Central Ave, move it over to the parking on the other side, you don't have to then try and paint lines in the ground to have people park parallel instead of at an angle. And I think in front of the railroad station, if you move it to that side of the railroad station side, you also get the complaints from the apartment association not having it right on their side of the road too. And also with it moving on the other side of the road, it gets it to a straighter shot through town. And I don't know if anyone's snowmobiles trying to cross a road while turning doesn't exactly work that great. So if we do a straighter shot through town, I think it'll be more beneficial. Maybe the scraping will be less noise, but obviously the engine noise will still be there. But that's our opinion, is moving it to the other side of the road.
Thank you.
Good evening, John Sims from Depot Square, and I do have a contrary opinion. And may I hand out a brief...
Thank you, John.
As far as we're concerned, the snowmobile trail was quite a disaster for Depot Square, and attached to the handout I gave you are some photographs. The snow that the snowmobile trail is made out of is road snow that is scraped up from the highways. It contains grit, salt, and all the other debris, And the last picture that I showed you is of a pile of snow that is the stuff used to build a snowmobile trail. So it's very noisy, it's very abrasive. And then the second page, on the first page you see the trail, on the second photograph of the second page you see the ice that collects on the sidewalk. The snowmobile trail blocks our sidewalk from draining, and the drain water from the snowmobile trail pools on our sidewalk and freezes. And the freeze-thaw cycle is breaking up our sidewalk. I talked to Dave Ford and Matt about that, and they felt that that was a town responsibility to maintain that sidewalk. So you have a deteriorating sidewalk caused by the inability of the meltwater to drain away. The meltwater itself is very oily because it's partly scraped off the highways, and I don't think the oil comes from the snowmobile so much, but it is basically highway scrape-off. The usage of the trail, I live there, I'm there most of the time, and so when I hear the snowmobiles go by, I'm tempted to look. So for periods of time I do. And 19 out of 20 of the snowmobiles that passed our depot square went straight out onto the lake. And so the snowmobilers are using it as a link from east of here onto the lake, and a very handy link it is. But most do not stop in town, and when I go downtown, there is no parking area for snowmobiles that have parked and that are doing shopping or whatever else downtown. The only place I have seen them parked is back at the freight shed, which is where they used to park before there was a snowmobile trail, and occasionally on the remains of the trail outside Joe Green's, and they park there, which in that section of the trail gets very heavy use, and I've seen trucks parking on it, and people use it as not as a cleared snowmobile trail, but as something else. The snowmobiles run by from 7 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. They are noisy. They rev their engines because they're going slowly over the trail, and that's how I understand you do it. One of the photographs shows you a group of snowmobiles that are parked outside the condos while their drivers are using the bathrooms. And it's a congregating area. It's a nice handy spot. Bathrooms are there. And so more than once we have had a flock of machines sit there. Usage of the snowmobile, and this is an estimate. This is from last year. The trail was built on the 10th of January, and it had no use for the next 10 days. Total number of snowmobiles that used the trail in January was 15. And this is, again, my estimate, but it's a reasonably educated one. February was heavy use, beginning with Martin Luther King weekend and going on through. Then in March, the usage fell way off. So if you do approve a snowmobile trail, I would ask you to approve it for the month of February, subject to whether, obviously, Mother Nature is going to impact that. But the usage by the people was in February. That's when the school holidays are. That's when people have time. I talked to the driver who delivers the inventory to Bradley's. He drives a 48-foot-long trailer. He says that sometimes he's unable to make the turn back onto Central Avenue, and so he has to go out via Lena Street and make his turn on 28, coming out of Lena Street on 28. When you're driving a 48-foot-long trailer, that's not a nice turn to have to make. On occasion, he has had to go on past the freight shed and make the full loop. But it's a nuisance for the deliverers. So I think my conclusion is that it's wonderful to have a linkage from east side of town onto the lake. I have a letter from Grant Hatch, and if, with your indulgence, he asked me if I would read it to you. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It is the last page of the handout I gave to you. And it's dated today, and it's to the town of Wolfeboro. As a snowmobiler and a property owner on Central Avenue, I am against the town allowing a snowmobile trail to again be built on downtown streets. I find it extremely frustrating and unprofessional that both last year and again this year, I was not notified, and this is Grant Hatch speaking, not notified of there being a meeting on the downtown snowmobile trail matter, one that directly impacts my property and finances more than any other. I learned of this meeting by a third party on Monday. The concept of linking the CVRT, and I don't know what that stands for, but I assume it's the... Okay. To the lake seems reasonable at first. However, the reality of it is that relatively few snowmobiles use the link. While a couple of businesses in town may benefit from it, that comes at a steep expense of others and the inconvenience of the general public every day. I rode the downtown trail once last year as a novelty. Quite honestly, I think the link of the CVRT with the existing trail from Heathbrook across the golf course and onto Lake Minnepesaukee is better. It takes only a few minutes longer and has no negative impact on business, downtown drivers, parking spaces, or pedestrians. The Spectrum building, which is the building that Grant owns, pays over $6,000 a year in property taxes to the town of Wolfeboro. The largest and the premium unit is the one located at 21 Central Avenue. I operated my photo business there for over 25 years. Recently, Sotheby's International Realty occupied the space. Due to a change in management, they decided not to renew their long-term lease. They also made it known to me that they were not pleased with an unexpected snowmobile trail disrupting the sidewalk and parking in front of their location. That prime location leases for nearly $30,000 annually. Having it vacant is a huge financial burden. In the months since April that the unit has been vacant, 2 of the qualified parties interested in the space for locating their businesses there expressed serious concern regarding the snowmobile trail. This clearly shows the negative impact that the trail has on my building and subsequently the huge financial impact it has on me personally. I have been working hard to find another high-quality tenant that will be a good fit for the town and benefit the community on a year-round basis. In conclusion, I'm strongly against the town allowing the trail again, as it disrupts and negatively impacts the overwhelming majority of citizens while benefiting a relative few. Beyond that, to expect property owners and tenants to just accept the negative financial impact is truly unjust. It's time to put an idea that had its day in the sun to rest. Respectfully, Grant P. Hatch. Thank you for that opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Steve?
So, John, could I just ask you a question?
Yes.
So if I heard you correctly, you're not objecting to this, you're just objecting to the months of operation.
I'm objecting to its location.
No, you're objecting to the months of operation. You said earlier that you'd recommend it be operated in the month of, I think you said February?
Yes.
So you're not objecting to the trail, you're just objecting to how many months it's being used?
No, I'm making the observation that it was really only used for the month of February. Okay. It was not used in January and not used in March. So there seems to be little point having it there outside the month of February. But my main concern is its location. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Hello, my name is Steve Cole. I also live at Depot Square. My main concern with that location of the snowmobile trail is the loss of access to the front of our building, and also to the loss of safe use of the sidewalks that run along our building. My wife and I, one of the reasons we live in town is we enjoy walking where we want to go. This makes it difficult for us. But I am pleased to hear there's thoughts of moving it across the street, because I think that would probably alleviate a lot of my issues. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make a comment that I left out earlier? And I apologize to Mr. Williams for not telling him this. All right, is that, no?
Just hold it.
Is that better?
Speak up.
No?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize for that. As far as moving it, I know from when we looked at those possibilities, as I referenced earlier, there are three additional handicap parking spaces that it would cover, that you would lose. So there's one right at the railroad station and then two in the Pocket Garden area. And additionally, we looked at and this is just from memory, so you have a larger intersection on that side of the road. So I just wanted to provide that information. And
Mary, does that mess up your oil delivery? If you had it on that side?
I think that we all can receive our deliveries and have access no matter where it is, because it's not on the sidewalk at the Depot Square condominiums, and the oil delivery trucks have long hoses. And my spreadsheet tells me, as far as the use of the trail, the weather didn't cooperate initially, so those January dates, we had a high degree of 2 degrees only, doesn't make for building snowmobile trails. And then we had heavy rains and flooding on the trails, wash out areas of the trails, not just here, all over. In the end of January, the lake was all ice without snow, but then, as Mr. Sims pointed out, shortly after that, it all came together with the snow and ice. Thank you for letting me add those comments.
Thanks, Mary.
If I may just make a couple of comments, entirely different hat. Obviously, that's nothing to do with the trolley. I've been on the Economic Development Committee for several years, and we mentioned that study, 96 businesses interviewed in 2014, one-on-one interviews, and one of the things that was mentioned over and over again was needing to extend and make Wolfeboro a 4-season resort, so doing everything we can to bring people into town on the off-season is really better, and growing those seasons is important in lots of ways, and you don't necessarily need to grow the summer a whole lot more. But so just to bring that's something that the business community has requested, and this is one step towards that direction. And the other point I'd make is that I have lived downtown myself in the wintertime as well, and there are all kinds of different noises. Anybody who chooses to live in the city, as I call it, and move into the city for the wintertime, you're going to have a different experience. And that there are, my objection, I might say objection to it, but the reality is, if you live downtown in the wintertime, anytime there's a snowstorm, you're going to be up all night one night. And if you have 3 storms in a week, maybe, and it depends on how much there is, you're going to be up all night listening to the vehicles go beep, beep, beep as they back up and as they clean up the town. So I just think that when you choose to live downtown, you're going to have downtown noise, whether it's cars in the summer or boats or vintage boat race or snowmobiles. That it's kind of part of the package, I think. But it sounds like maybe they're trying to adjust that and get it away. You know, get some great ideas here, and so listening to those ideas. But I have to speak in favor of it, and I know that the Economic Development Committee, which is the towns, Mary's talking about the chamber, we both have them, but that Alan Harding was not able to be here tonight, but that I know that on Tuesday morning when we discussed that the Wolfeboro, Town of Wolfeboro Economic Development Committee is very much in favor of continuing the snowmobile trail, and I personally would recommend it as well. Thank you.
Steve Durgan, Sewell Road, and I had the dubious distinction of being the chairman of the subcommittee for the Frozen Lake Access Committee. I say dubious because we were given the task of trying to increase the use of the downtown business area from what is obvious to everybody, a summer, spring, sort of, and fall, definitely, attraction. And we knew that if we could connect the hinterlands, as I call it, off to the east with the lake, that we would have access to all of the towns on the lake as we do by boat. And that snowmobiles, and I live on the poor people's side of Sewell Road, so I get to look down on the lake in the wintertime, and I see literally hundreds of snowmobiles driving across the lake. We wanted to capture some of that business, and that was our sole purpose in doing this. We never really had an adequate trial for it because we just happened to be in that type of a climate zone right now, where the first 2 years it was useless. And even last year when we were ecstatic about the results when it worked, it was really only a couple of weeks at best with some fringe area problems. But I want to say that I welcome the comments of the people here that have problems with the snowmobile trail, because this was never more than a trial that we were trying to make the snowball round by, fitting it in a little bit. And by getting this kind of information, none of their comments are undoable. They're all reasonable, and they're things that I think that reasonable people can work together to solve. Some of the decisions that we made because I would call it the doctrine of competing harms. I mean, we looked at 3 different ways to get from the snowmobile trail, from the Bridge Falls path to the lake, and we chose the one that it was on the side of the post office because basically we thought it used less parking spaces. And we felt that if we put it on another side, that there would be more parking spaces lost. And given the hue and cry about parking, we were concerned with that. Maybe we made an error in that, but certainly not too late to change that. The Snowmobile Club is here. They're listening to the comments. They are very reasonable people. And I'm sure that we can come to a modus vivendi on all of this. As far as the business to the town of Wolfeboro, I can tell you that I had a real strong personal interest in seeing whether this was working. And at one point there were 62 snowmobiles down there parked. Many of them were parked on the lake, which is a natural parking lot. A lot of them were in Cape Park, but the more the lake freezes, the more the snowmobiles will congregate there. It's a lot more comfortable for them. And of course, the whole idea of getting from the Bridge Falls path all the way through and onto the lake is what people really want to do. They just as soon not stop up by the Chamber of Commerce building and continue on to the relative peaceful and open area of the lake. We need to do what we can to try and make that better. If we can use whiter snow, maybe change it a little bit more, but these are all things we can do, and I hope we can all work together to make it happen. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak?
I'm Nancy Talbot. I'm also a resident at the Depot Square, and I think probably one of the major issues is that this is our home, this is where we live, and that sidewalk is unusable. And I came in a little late, I'm not sure what other people said, but our sidewalk is unusable. It freezes, the snow melts, and it's destroying the sidewalk. Number one, there were a lot of cracks, but now there's even more. But we can't walk out our front door. And we have to go out through the garage, and out into the street. It's just impossible to use that sidewalk. So, and I doubt anybody would appreciate having that trail if they live in if it was 4 feet off your front stoop, which it is for us. It's it just really we live downtown because we enjoy getting out and walking to the post office, and those are the things why we moved downtown and yeah, there's noise, there's night noise, but this particular structure in front of our place is, you know, it just kind of ruins the, it's inconvenient, yes, but it's also dangerous. You know, we can't walk out our front door. So, for what that's worth, thank you.
If it were moved to the other side?
I would love to have you move it to the other side. I think that's a great solution.
Well, I mean,
Put it right up against the Chamber of Commerce there. That'd be fine.
So
I mean, if that's the option we're looking at, we'd be thrilled.
So it sounds maybe with I'm sorry.
Oh, your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. It sounds like maybe with an exception or two that there's an ask here that says, can you relocate the trail? The other ask is, and Mary, you pointed it out, there might be some handicapped parking, and I think we'd have to kind of think about how we deal with that. And no disrespect to John's comment. Again, John, I thought I heard John say, you know, I'm okay with it running during a certain time, and I think we got a weather report from Steve and from others that said the weather was not very cooperative last year. So I think I agree that with some of the comments made. I think there's an opportunity here to do something a little different and maybe solve a couple of problems. I don't think it'll be a perfect solution, but it sounds to me like we can figure this out. And I don't know how we make whiter snow. That would be a challenge.
It's spray paint.
Maybe Christine Collins can bring some down from the mountain. But I think there's a problem here that can be solved. And but the first big problem is, can you move the trail and not create a worse problem than we had in the first place? If that's okay, then maybe the other things can fall into place. I don't know.
I do have, oh, okay.
We'll take one more. I don't want to keep this going too long.
I'll be real quick. I'm Eric Piper. I'm a snowmobiler, member of the Snowmobile Club. I did use the trail several times last year. I did not stop to shop, sorry. It's super convenient. I understand the concern of the trails. One thing I would ask is that if for some reason we couldn't come to an agreement on the trail itself, that we definitely do not bubble the docks.
Right.
That was key to get people to come right up to the docks and park. If they can't go through, at least they can come into town.
I have a couple of comments. I'd like to stop the public for right now. Okay, I have a couple of comments. Listening to what's going on, I think that one of the things we should probably look at is changing the trail by the railroad station to the railroad station instead of the condo side. That's one thing I'm hearing very clearly. The second thing is the weather. This is all weather dependent. So even if we shut the bubblers off and never start them at all, it could be the middle of January before that's frozen in down there. Certainly pretty consistent, I would think. And then I hear about certain dates, and if you pick like January 15th to the end of February or March 15th, that's a 2-month window. By then the lake should be frozen, those kinds of things. But a lot of this is weather related, and we can't control that. We can control where we put things. And I understand the people from the condo group, their concerns, but I also heard some comments from Kathy, I believe, about backup beepers and everything through the night when it's snowing. And I know that, and it sounds like to me most of the traffic on this trail is on either a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's 3 days, pretty much. Everything else that we've gotten from people basically says that as far as the businesses, they're in favor of it, even though the last 2 years, last year wasn't too bad, but the 2 years before that, as Linda mentioned, nothing got going with Fisherville or anything else because of ice conditions. And that's something we've put up with here for years. So we have had plenty of years when we've had Fisherville and golf and everything else out there. But again, that's related. I think that, you know, Brewster is on board, and yes, there is another way to get down to the lake through the golf course. But again, a lot of people don't come that way. I can't do much. I don't think anybody can about dirty snow. I'm sorry, but I don't think we can help that one out too much. Snowmobile Club certainly has been very helpful in keeping that trail groomed and smooth for people, snowmobiles, to be able to use it. I think they're probably going to continue doing that if this goes through. I think that we can put other signs on the trail easy enough for people. As far as the parking, showing the parking of the snowmobiles by the bathrooms, that's why we have the bathrooms open in the winter, is for people to use. Sorry, but it's one of the few places we have public bathrooms. I don't have an issue with that, personally. So I don't know what other comments people on the board have, and let's get this thing going.
Dave has one, and then I have a motion, and I think I've captured what most people were addressing, so
I'm in favor of the snowmobile trail, but I'm in favor of moving it so that the condos aren't blocked, and I think that would be the good solution. We could say that would be for this year, and we could revisit it next year with the concerned parties saying how it went. And in any event, it's been said several times, the window here is like 6 weeks or a month or 2 months, so it's not ruining anybody's anything. I think it's good for downtown, and I'd be in favor of it with a revised look, with it, moving it, as mentioned, for the benefit of the condo owners.
Linda?
Yeah, I move that the town construct the 2020 snowmobile trail no earlier than January 15th and remove it no later than March 15th. The Snowmobile Club will put up no parking signs on the trail and parking signs by the railroad station and Cape Park, and the town will move the trail to the other side of the road from Depot Square.
Okay, that's pretty much what I was looking for. Anybody else? I'll second that. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question on that, Linda. You're talking about moving it from the condos over toward the railroad station. How about the other piece down by the post office?
I was addressing the Depot Square people's problems to get it onto the other side, and then I would say we can work and see which place is the best. I don't know about that.
Okay, because a comment that this gentleman made too, from the Snowmobile Club, was that on alignment is fairly important for them too, and by moving just one section over, then the snowmobiles are going to be trying to turn again to go over to the other side on Central.
Right.
I'm more willing to, if people would like that changed, I'm more willing to do that. I
think if we change it there, we're going to lose more parking spaces than we really want to.
So if we do it in front of the railroad station, they're going to have more of an angle coming over.
Fine.
Instead, but if we go down the other side, we're going to wipe out a lot of parallel parking. And that's what you were asking for it, right, Brad?
Yeah,
I think that's right.
the only extra spots you're going to lose would be what the width is of the entrance going into the back of the post office. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty much equal from one side of the road to the other. So what's that, maybe 2 spaces, 2 extra spaces you would lose there, I think, and overall from going from one side to the other.
David, board, can I ask you a question? No, this is there any reason why we couldn't change that to the other side? I mean, I'm thinking about drainage, manholes, that kind of thing.
I would prefer not to make comments off the top, because I don't know. Mr. Sims brought up a lot of drainage issues. There are a lot of doorways on those other side too, so we're moving the problem one side to the other side. We can make it work, and I think, because there's going to be another issue as you go through the other side, coming out of the dock side now, we're going to have a crossing traffic, because traffic's coming out, you're going to have to cross them.
There's a crosswalk right there, too.
And we're going to wipe out the crosswalk. So
Okay.
there's going to be a lot of compromises.
But we can move it on the other side.
Hey, we can shut the road down. We can do whatever you want. The question is it safe? No. Is it going to be look nice? No. Are we going to minimize parking spaces? I think the comment is it doesn't matter. I think because we're parallel on either side. And it's all Mother Nature, too, because it took 3 years to get here. And there's a study, you know, over the last 50 years, the temperature in New Hampshire has gone up 5 degrees, and it's increasing. So we may get 1 or 2 more years out of it. We may not. Mother Nature might dictate. So really, I don't think it's going to matter much.
Thanks, Dave. I didn't really want to put you on the spot, but I did. Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Pretty good discussions. Okay, next on our agenda is the Wolfeboro Energy Committee.
Thanks, guys.
You going to explain what it is?
What it is?
What is it?
So it was my understanding that we had asked to do an update as well as the warmth and...
State your name for the record, please.
Susan Fuller. I'm chair of the Energy Committee.
Thank you.
And so I just would like to do a brief sort of recap of the Energy Committee history, and then Nancy will come up and make the proposal for the Warmth and More Fund, if that is agreeable. And Matt is... So the Energy Committee was formed in 2007 as a result of a warrant article, and the mission of the Energy Committee is to identify opportunities for the town of Wolfeboro and its residents to save energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to work to assure that cost-effective energy efficiency practices and greenhouse gas reduction strategies are implemented townwide. The committee aims to assist the town in addressing these goals as approved by the voters in the town meeting warrant article of March of 2007. The committee will make recommendations to and cooperate and communicate with town officials, boards, and commissions, as well as public and private groups with similar concerns, and with the appropriate agencies of the state, regional, and federal governments. That was brought before the Selectmen in 2007 as our Energy Committee mission. So I'd just like to do a brief review of committee history and the activities of this past year, and then looking ahead to 2020. Initially, we focused on municipal energy use as a committee, and we applied for and received a grant to fund a municipal energy tracking system. We also applied for and received in 2010 the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant worth over $128,000. This money was used for energy efficiency measures for the Public Safety Building and the Armory, an audit of Pop Wayland, and municipal energy planning. That municipal energy planning was captured in this community energy plan, a roadmap to a secure energy future, as well as a report on financing municipal energy projects. Since then, town employees have been responsible for keeping the energy inventory current, for setting short-term reduction goals, which were achieved, for contracting with Light Tech for lighting and energy audits using RGGI funds, also for lighting retrofits of the Public Safety Building, the library, the ice rink, the Highway Department garages, and the water treatment plant. We also implemented, the Municipal Energy Department implemented a draft net metering policy, and the Public Works implemented many efficiency projects. In 2016, we created the Solarized Wolfeboro initiative. This was to help residents to solarize. We worked with solar installers through an RFP to create a way for the aggregation of many solar installations resulted in lower costs. So people, it was a great opportunity for people who were thinking about going solar to take that opportunity. And you can see that from the running total installations, the numbers in 2016 were substantial, and the doubling of the amount of solar that year almost was double what had already been in the town. We've also done a lot of community education, beginning with a climate change briefing in 2007. We did workshops on reducing home energy use, also building and renovating homes in a changing energy environment. We've done 2 energy expos, the first in 2008 with over 400 people attending, that included workshops, speakers, and tours of buildings that had special energy initiatives. We created an energy efficiency library resource area that included DVDs of all the workshops that Wolfeboro Community Television provided from the expo. This past year, we worked with Barry Muccio at the Municipal Electric Department to adopt a final net metering policy that raised the size of the array allowed in Wolfeboro from 25 kilowatts to 100 kilowatts. We also worked with the Planning Board to create the first energy chapter for the master plan that includes these 7 key goals. First, to reduce municipal energy use by 40% by 2029, 50% renewable sources of electricity by 2029, and work toward a goal of 100% of all sources of energy, reduction of transportation energy use and cost, community education on the benefits of reduced energy and achieving the master plan goals, assure that buildings are constructed to the highest available energy efficiency standards, a municipal electric department 10-year strategy to lay the foundation for local renewable energy generation, and development that encourages local efficiency and conservation. And I can't tell you how pleased I am, and Kathy's not here, to hear about the trolley from remote parking into downtown. I think that's an excellent step in the right direction, and certainly part of our energy goals that we talked about. So going forward in 2020, we're going to focus in 4 areas: municipal energy use, the renewable goal and infrastructure needs, transportation, and community education. And also, we want to bring forth tonight the creation of a Warmth and More Fund, which will help those who have struggled to meet their energy needs.
Okay, that's it for the slides. Do you have any questions for Susan before I go into the Warmth and More Fund? Okay. So my name is Nancy Hirschberg. So when we were working with Barry on the net metering, Barry informed the committee, he said, "I'm not sure you understand how energy insecure some of the people are in our community." He said, "I have to go every month. There are 150 families in our community who are getting notices of disconnect." And that really connected with the committee, and it became really clear that one of the first things we need to do is really try to address some of the needs of the community, those in most need in the community. Some of us on the committee we're familiar with programs they have in other communities that are very, very successful, where they create these Warmth and More type funds, where people can donate to a fund, and so that as the needs are identified, this can be directed to, the charitable donation can be directed towards people in need to help pay for their fuel, or a repair on their boiler, a broken window, insulation, warm clothes, anything that they might need. So we immediately went to Amy, who's the welfare director, and said, Amy, is this a need in our community? You think this would be a good thing to do? And she said, this would be fantastic. We'd love to have this. And we worked with her to develop what you see in your packet, that proposal. At first, we were hoping to start it this winter. Why miss a winter? So we thought we could do it through the town, just setting up a fund. And when it went to the attorney, he said, no, you really need to do this through a town warrant article. And so we're here tonight to request that the Selectmen put forth a warrant article to create a fund, which would become part of the trustees of the trust fund, that would not involve any donations in any town funds directly. It would be all raised through charitable donations from individuals, foundations, etc. We had some ideas in here, you know, donations from businesses, individuals, and foundations. We could do fundraisers. We're sure that, you know, could be any of the different kind of fundraisers they have in town. Some of the school groups might do them. In the future, if it's possible with the software, we could even, because we have our own municipal electric department, we would hope in the future might be able to put a check off on there where you could round up each month, raise money that way, etc. So the idea is that this would be go to the voters to create the fund. The welfare director would administer an application process as she does already. I want to be really clear, and I learned this, my mother works on one of them in Kittery, that the first question when she answers that phone, she asks the person is, have you been to the town to direct you to the federal funds first? So that would be the first thing. They would get the money that is available. But then when that runs out for the people in February or so, if it does, or if someone who might be, Amy gave the example this week, she said, I have 2 people this week who would be perfect for this. One person was $3 over, missed the ability to get the funds from the federal funds, and another person, I can't even remember what, oh yeah, uses wood maybe, and wood is not eligible under the federal funds as well. Oh no, I know it was an elderly person, and if she gives them money through that, she has to put a lien on their house. And she said, if I could, there's some way for me to do it without doing that. So that is someone who I would have loved to have had this money for. So that's the big picture of it. Any questions?
Jim, do you have any more information on the warrant article that Mark recommends?
So I believe this has been to Attorney Puffer for review. This is the feedback which he had provided with the recommended warrant article language.
Okay. Any questions?
And in our numbering, it would be number Y. It'd be Article Y. We don't number it until we get the planning board, so it would become Y.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Anybody have any questions? No. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda. This could take some time. We want to move up these other.
Yeah, I would think it would be good to get, we're going to take a while on the warrant articles. I think it's a great idea you have to move. I'd like to get Dave Ford out of here, and we have the people who are here for the trail.
Okay, let's move up to the walking trails and hunting areas, planning and development.
Good evening, board members. Matt Sullivan, Director of Planning and Development. I actually have 2 matters to speak about this evening, one of which is the hunting area at Abenaki, and I want to first direct you to the letter that was included in your packet. We received this concern in addition to another that was not written in a more formal format about the activity of hunting at the Abenaki ski area parcel. And the concern, as you can see within the letter, is that that use has historically existed there sort of in concert with the recreational uses that are occurring out there during the hunting seasons throughout the year. This resident asked me then to pass this letter along to the Board of Selectmen and to the town manager for your consideration. I would be remiss if I did not mention that we did reach out to Primex, the town's insurance provider. They recommended that we not have those two uses occur in the same area, but they did not. It was not an outright recommendation. And I'd also add that we do know that these uses have coexisted safely there for many, many years. We have had no incidents reported to us, but as you can see, we do have some concerns expressed by this taxpayer and by other residents as well. My request for the board this evening is to either direct town staff to investigate the issue further and to come up with a recommendation, or simply to get a recommendation from the board on whether or not you think this is a legitimate issue that we need to investigate further.
Well, I think that most people in this area know that we have hunting season. And I think that most people I see during hunting season, if they're out walking their dogs or walking, they wear orange, either a hat or a vest or whatever. And the only thing I would suggest is that maybe a sign be put up in the parking lot or by the lodge saying that if you are to be in this area, to please be advised to wear orange.
And actually,
that's my feeling. I don't think we should stop hunting out there. I don't think we should stop any of that usage that we have now, personally.
And Dave, thanks for bringing that up. When we did receive the initial input, Christine Collins actually did post some signage at the trail entrances. I think we really posted it temporarily for the primary deer season this year, but we do intend to improve that signage if the board decides that we want those uses to continue out there. We would simply erect more permanent signage that would have a notice of wear bright colors, be aware of be aware of the hunting activity.
That's my feeling.
And I'm absolutely with Dave. You know, I live at the end of a dirt road with woods all around me, and you wear your orange, and you know, that's coexists, and 99% of the people are just lovely.
Okay.
And hunting's been going on here for
Yeah, I'm in the same space.
many years.
Okay.
Yep, I'm in the same space. I'm sure the state has statutes in terms of how things should be posted. This is one of these things we would probably err in putting more signs up there. But I'm in the same space as my colleagues.
So just to clarify for the record, so the board is saying those uses can coexist there as long as we have adequate signage posted moving forward. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay. Thank you. The other matter that's included in your packet, it's not specifically identified on the agenda, but I did include a draft fat biking policy for consideration by the board this evening, and I want to explain what fat biking is, and I'll do my best to do that. And I'll probably struggle without the assistance of some experts who aren't here, but I'll try to cover it. And then I want to talk about how we arrived at this policy and why we're asking the board to consider it at Abenaki. At the Abenaki cross-country ski area. Fat biking is something you may have seen around town. We have some folks riding normal sort of mountain bikes with larger tires that allow them to ride in the snow. It makes cross-country ski trails a very attractive environment for them, but they're not necessarily allowed on all of the parcels in town that have those recreational trails, including Sewell Woods, where they're not allowed. But they are allowed on many other parcels, and actually I just remembered that Dan is in the audience, so I may call on him to speak to this a little bit this evening as well. But the bottom line is that fat biking is increasing in popularity. It allows folks to get out and bike during the winter season, something that we haven't really had the opportunity to do in the past. We're seeing the increase in activity not only at some of the town's other recreational properties, but also at Abenaki ski area. And last year we did have some concerns based on the fact that some of the fat biking that was going on was degrading some of the cross-country ski trails that are groomed by the Wolfeboro Cross-Country Ski Association, and therefore we had those concerns brought to our attention. What we did in response is we convened both the Cross-Country Ski Association and some of the stakeholders on the biking side of things to try and identify a solution that would allow both uses to coexist. Again, it's a use coexistence issue. Both uses to coexist on the groomed cross-country ski trails. And just to back up a little bit more on that, for many, many years, Steve Flagg and the folks of the association have been grooming those trails, and they're really certainly a class of the state and also a world-class cross-country ski area that we're fortunate to have in the community that attracts a lot of visitors and certainly is an economic driver. So we want to protect that grooming moving forward. We worked on a policy we tried to identify a policy decision last year. We were unable to reach one, but we actually did reconvene the group just a couple months ago to try and come up with something that would be amenable to both parties. Took some time, but I think both groups have compromised to come up with the policy that you see in front of you, and I want to quickly walk through it. But before I start on that, I want to quickly identify that the map I've included identifies in yellow the areas where fat biking would be permitted. Just that's reference as we go through this list of conditions here. One moment to find my policy. Okay. There are two permitted points of trail access, one at the Abenaki Lodge complex and obviously the other at the parking lot Filter Bed Road. To the prior point, this is where we would post any signage that would indicate the restrictions that we talk about within the policy. Specifically for the bikes themselves, we would require that the tires be at a minimum width of 3.8 inches. It seems large, but that is the standard width for a fat bike tire. We have tire pressures that would be required to be at least 8 psi. That really, what that does is it limits the degradation of the trail, eliminates the ruts that might be caused, that would really impact the ability to effectively cross-country ski on the trails there. Trail restrictions, it would be only the permitted bike usage trails that are listed there. I'm not going to go through those individually, but this was a list that was agreed upon between the two parties. Further, some use restrictions. These really just are generally good behavior restrictions, leaving adequate space for both usages on the tracks, not riding on the classic track grooming that's done, making sure that that's preserved so that folks can effectively do that. You can see there are some simple things in here like being good ambassadors and interacting safely with others that are on the trail at the time. And then one of the critical ones is the last one, and that is that if any posting is closed either by the town of Wolfeboro or by the Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Association that posts a regular trail report, then it would be deemed that the fat biking would not be allowed. And the reason that would be done is that the conditions are such that they would easily degrade the trail, particularly when there's thaw or there's melting condition. So that would be an issue that would result in closure. One of the things that you may or may not be aware of is that Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Association collects a fee because they groom the trails. The grooming of the trails also is an asset to the fat bikers. That groomed surface makes it a lot easier for them to enjoy the surface. And as a result, we've agreed to a proportionally reduced fee for fat biking that both Christine's staff and the Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Association will continue to collect. And we've agreed to a fee for this year, and we're going to revisit that on a regular basis. But that fee and that pass will be required in order to ride on the trails. And we anticipate beginning that as soon as this policy is adopted. I would note that if a season's pass for the if a ski season pass holder wants to ride a fat bike, they're welcome to do that without purchasing an additional pass through Christine's staff or Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski. Obviously, if there's any issue with following this policy, the potential penalty is that someone may not be allowed to use the trails any longer. One of the questions is how we're going to enforce this. We're going to rely on folks that are using the trails to enforce this and Christine's staff if they see anything. We're certainly not suggesting that we're going to have staff out there patrolling regularly. It's going to be hopefully a self-policing issue.
Is there one person who's going to make the final decision?
I think we're going to have a discussion at the town level as to who does that, but it would be, we're hopeful that we never really have to deal with this, and we're hopeful that a strong conversation will hopefully deal with the issue, but we'll have a discussion if we need to actually enforce the policy.
I think we should have somebody who everybody knows is designated that is going to be the person who's going to deal with it. To remove the pass.
Matt, so there's a bike organization over in Tilton, and they're fondly known as Highland. Did you?
We did not consult with them on this, but I know that the folks involved are regular or have a good relationship with those folks, and we did find several comparable policies, but not such that they really dealt with town land. So we were aware of other policies, but this is a unique one to Wolfeboro.
Here's something to consider. So Highland does mountain bike trails under the auspices of an organization called Single Tracks, and they have some material on their website. They list 17 locations up in this neighborhood, none in the Lakes region, but for us, there's 3. They point out 3 locations here in the town of Wolfeboro that you can use, and one is Sewell Woods, the second is Abenaki, and the third is they call it Fernald, right? And that's on their website, so you can kind of Google Earth it and zoom in. The closest other facility is up in Plymouth. There's one down in Rochester. But in the Lakes region, we have 3 that they're referencing. So whatever we decide to do, which makes sense if we can make sure we don't wreck our trails, we probably ought to link up with these people, because I know we're interested in making this a year-round community, and there's a lot of people who spend a lot of money. These bikes cost several $1,000s, so they're not cheap. And I think it would be good if we decide to do this, to put a little more structure around it, a single point of contact, but also to make sure that the rules are clear, and maybe some promotion if it makes sense.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then the last piece of the policy, and the policy is, I hope, simple but understandable, is that we would review this policy twice a year, and both at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season, to make sure that we don't need to make amendments to it, that all the stakeholders that are involved have their interests represented. So my request for this evening is, subject to any amendments that the board would like to recommend, I'd like to have adoption of this policy this evening, and if there are conditions, I'm happy to discuss those and include those if you'd like.
The only thing I would want included is somebody named as the person who will deal the final decision on the violation. To take somebody's pass, I think we should have somebody designated as a hit person.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Anybody else have any questions of Matt? Steve?
Come to the microphone, please.
Come to the mic,
Run up to the microphone, please. That'd be great.
If I run my studded tires and my fat bike on the trail, would that be allowed use? They're like regular car stud tires.
Yeah, we haven't had a conversation prohibiting them, so my answer today would be yes. That would be a perfect example, though, of something that if we have an issue as we go along this first season, as we're trialing this, that may be something we turn back to, but it's a good question. Yep, we haven't restricted it here.
Question?
I have to say, and I'm sorry if I misunderstood this, but when I've been talking with the people who did negotiate that, or had been conversations, and I told them when I saw the agenda that it wasn't on the agenda for tonight, because it says walking trails and hunting areas. So people who had planned to be here didn't come because of that. So I have lots of comments to make, but I don't know if you're going to continue this. I would hope that you wouldn't make a decision tonight, because people I know who wanted to comment didn't come because of that.
I think we're going to make a decision tonight.
Okay, then I'll make my comments, and I think that's very unfortunate, because, okay, I guess where I'm coming is I'm a skier, and when I heard about this, I was just stunned, because could you imagine having bicycles on the Abenaki downhill trails? And those are, I think we'd all agree that that would be kind of insane and dangerous. And if you think of it, those skiers have edges. Those of us on the Nordic trails don't even have edges. We have way less control than that. So to have bicycles flying through the woods with skiers is a safety hazard. I'm thrilled with all the efforts to have, I've been saying actually to Mary at the Chamber for years, what Nordic skiing brings to our town, the number of people, I would bet is probably more than snowmobilers and ice skaters combined. It's a real opportunity. We got the #1 Nordic trails in the state one year. It's really blossoming. People are seeing it as a real destination. Bikes and skiers don't mix. Just like we don't allow dogs on the trails. Dogs and skiers don't, snowshoers aren't allowed on the trails because they ruin it. So we're talking about not only having speed, but also you're having things that ruin the experience for the skiers. I'm out there all the time, and I'm meeting people usually people from Massachusetts and all over who come here and think of this as their little gem. So I'm deeply concerned about this. I think it's the wrong thing to do. There's plenty of room out there. These trails were built, 50 years ago for Nordic skiing. They were built by Nordic skiers. They're maintained by Nordic skiers. They're funded by Nordic skiers. I'm all for it. There's tons of land out there. Build some other trails that they did for the snowshoers for bikers. The bikers, by the way, I don't think can skate. I was surprised what Paul read because they can't go in Sewell Woods. That's Lakes Region Conservation Trust. I don't think bikes are allowed in the winter on those trails. Is that correct? Yeah, so they're listed there. This is a problem with the biking groups. They have the whole rail trail, the lake. There's so many trails around that ruining the Nordic experience, I think, is not the direction to go. And had this word gotten out on this, I think you would have seen a lot of people here tonight. So, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
I would sort of support Nancy's concerns about the lack of stakeholders that are in the room this evening, but I would note that, and to Nancy's concerns, that I can say that during the discussions to form this policy, we engaged with, I think, those who are good representation of the very people that Nancy is talking about. We tried to have the right people in the room, particularly those on both sides of this issue. I'm happy to entertain continuing this and having a more formal public hearing to discuss it. The issue we have is what's happening outside this evening, and that is snow. So we are trying to come up with a policy in short order. But I am sensitive to the fact that maybe folks did not know this is on the agenda this evening.
I think that there were stakeholders that wrote this up.
Correct.
Right, cross-country people as well as bikers, so I don't have an issue with that. Dan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan Coons. I'm a resident of Wolfeboro. I'm also both a cross-country skier and a fat biker. Granted, my bike doesn't cost anywhere near several $1,000s, but I do love to ride during the winter. At present, really the only place we can ride during the winter is on the lake and on the rail trail. The lake is fine unless the snow is deep, in which it's impossible to ride unless you're following a snowmobile track. Sure. On the rail trail, you're sharing it with snowmobiles, and they're moving a whole lot faster than we are.
And cross-country skiers, and people walking, and dogs.
Yep.
All of the above.
All the above.
Yep.
To speak to Nancy's part about speed, my average speed during the winter riding on snow is 3 miles an hour. We're not ripping down the trails, blasting along, endangering people. Hikers and mountain bikers have shared trails successfully for decades. We have the Conservation Commission built multi-use trails at Fernald Station. They're used by trail runners, they're used by hikers, they're used by cross-country skiers.
Bikers.
There have been no conflicts that have been reported to the Conservation Commission in the 2 years that the trails have been open. There are ski areas that do allow fat bikes on the downhill runs, so it does happen. And as mentioned, fat bikes are not allowed in Sewell Woods during the winter. Lakes Region Conservation Trust has a memorandum of understanding with the cross-country ski group that allows them the right to define who uses the trails during the winter. And they've decided that the fat bikes are not allowed there, so that's why they're not there. It's not Lakes Region Conservation Trust, it's the Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Association that is excluding bikes from Sewell Woods.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Dave, I do have a concern if we didn't notice that we were going to talk about this on the agenda. You know, that does not allow anybody who might have been interested in coming to come. You know, if I read this, walking trails and hunting would not have made me believe that we were going to be talking about a fat bike policy on Abenaki trails. And I think we have an obligation to let the public know what we're talking about.
My answer to that is that the Wolfeboro Cross Country Association and the Fat Bike people have all had quite a few meetings by the looks, and I think they've come up with a policy, at least for this year, that we can probably live with. That's my comment. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm with Linda. I think it should be noticed.
Okay, make a motion. Brad, did you have something?
I just had one other comment too, is that under the section 4 there, use restrictions, under J, you kind of have an out clause that fat biking is not permitted upon any posting of closure by the town of Wolfeboro or via the website posting or other notification by the Wolfeboro Cross Country Ski Association. So at any time, where I see that, at any time that they see damage is starting to happen to the trails or there's conflicts or whatever is going on that isn't good, we have the option of, or they have the option of just closing it right down and stopping it, so.
Okay, somebody want to make,
Oh, sorry. Could I just say
Oh,
something?
come on up.
Just as the Parks and Rec Director, this has been something that's been going on last year, and that's why I reached out to Matt as the planning person, just to have conversations about it. I do feel we did reach out to all parties involved, and we're talking about town land that we could have said, hey, we're just going to make a decision. But what we did is we reached out to everyone because, especially at Abenaki, there's so many different users with the downhill skiers, the racers, the cross country. So we're trying to make everyone play nice together. And I think just having what we created that we could examine at the beginning of the season and the end of the season, and getting all parties involved, it was definitely hearing all the concerns and addressing them as we could, and having options that if we see things are damaging the trails and it's not used in a respectful way, we can make decisions to help that. So I know that everyone has a say in it, and I do appreciate that, but fat bikes are here to stay right now, and we're trying to find a home, because just saying no doesn't mean they're going to stay off of it, because no one's really managing that. It's self-policing. So we're giving them a home. It's not all the trails, just so you're aware. We just set, I think, was it one trail, a couple trails? It was a couple trails, so you'll see in the highlight. So it wasn't like all cross-country trails are open to fat bikes. So I think we did a good compromise, and at the end of the season, we want to re-examine it to see if it worked, it didn't work, if we need to find a new home. Also, the single track group is working for other options for them for the future. So this is something that is here to stay in Wolfeboro, and I think we're all working together to try to make them have a place too. So that's all I had to say for now.
Thank you, Christine.
I might make the suggestion that on the website, the town website, when I read these articles, the Board of Selectmen knows all about them as we get handout sheets, but the public really doesn't know what walking trails and hunting areas are and so forth, that perhaps a little bit more of a narrative could be given as to what the areas we're doing and whatever. For example, in Mason, Masonic Temple pilot, which isn't controversial, I'm sure. What does pilot mean? I know what it means, but what does the average person? So I would recommend that maybe on the website we have 2 or 3 or 4 sentences or areas that affect a lot of people, like the walking trails.
Okay. So what do you want to do with the fat bikes?
I'm not saying I'm against the policy. I just think the public and a lot of people use the trail. They should know that that's what we're talking about. And so I would put it off, or whether we want to have a special meeting in order to get it done. But I'm not going to vote in favor of it tonight, because I just think the public should have an opportunity.
I'm in the same space. I move to continue to our next and quickest available meeting so that we can review the policy, but adequately notice it.
Yep, I'd fully
second that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd fully support that. I think we have an obligation to do that, particularly after the work that's been put in, and we apologize for the error. So,
and you know what? In the meantime, Matt, I'm sorry to interrupt. In the meantime, if in fact we do have somebody representing on a website that if Sewell Woods is available, we may want to ring-a-ling-a-ling those folks and say it's not. So there's some things that can be done, but. Anyways, that's a motion on the table.
And am I correct right now, there's nothing that restricts the fat bikes from those?
That's exactly correct.
So what we're saying tonight is we're not willing to come through with this policy as a policy until the public has a right to to come in and give us comment.
And we would plan for the January 7th or January 8th meeting to bring this back.
This isn't even part of the big discussion.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Also, the
Table till the January 8th.
but you have hunting areas, which isn't even a part of the debate. So these descriptions need to be clarified somewhat, so someone can understand them and know whether they want to come to the meetings.
Okay, water and sewer rate update.
So the memo we have in front of you from Underwood Engineers dated December 12th with regards to the water and sewer rate review. If it's okay, I'm going to give you a very quick executive. I know you guys are in a very talkative mood tonight.
Thank you. We're not even done yet.
So get ready. 2017, we did a report. This year, 2018-19, we're a little high, a little low on water, a little high on sewer. Everything looks good. Recommend doing the same rate increases we did last year, which was 3% for water and 2.5% for sewer. Any questions?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
We've been through this more than once.
Yes, I would say a couple things. Because we're late getting here, like we did last year, I think we should give notice, and we could do it effective April 1st.
Okay.
Billing cycle, so that would be the first quarter. We are in pretty good shape, even though this does look like negative, because our water budget is going to go down quite significantly over the next couple of years with debt service dropping off. Sure. So we didn't want a knee-jerk reaction with any high ones. So we're trying to keep it 3%, and then we hope next year we'll go 2% for water rates. And the sewer, though, is only covering our O&M expenses, and this is trying to keep constant with that, so we're not negative. We're very close. So this 2.5% is necessary to keep our revenues to cover the O&M expenses. As we all know, our capital expenses for sewer are paid by the general government. And one of the recommendations here is when we look to fund our asset management for the sewer collection pump stations, we look that way also. Our sewer rates are one of the highest. That's a note that was in here. I don't know if you saw that. We are the 9th highest in the state, and the ones that are higher, they're close. They're really small communities with big expenses. The average person in the state pays $678. In Wolfeboro, you pay $1,112. So it's a significant burden for being on the sewer system. And the sewer does benefit the whole community, which is why we've done it that way, and hopefully we can support that. We'll have further discussions on asset management later. The other thing I'd point out, too, there was maybe on the charts in the back on page 6, there was unaccounted for water, and it does look like we're trending up.
Yeah.
With some concern about that, so I was looking, and one of the things the engineer did not put in bleeds. We've been running heavy bleeds as a way of, because we're in good shape with the reservoir quantities, and that keeps the water fresh, making sure that we don't have disinfection byproducts, the water age. So once we recalculate, then we'll come back with that shot. We're probably still too high, so we need to keep after that, but it was not in that 34% range. It's probably more in the 24% range.
That's a lot better.
Yes.
Any questions for David?
Just so that we're all clear, I presume and I assume that Troy has looked at this, because I don't know whether the number of 2.5% is too low, too high, but I assume you all have taken a hard look at this.
It's all based out of this, isn't it?
That's the 2017. That was before.
I'm talking about costs. We know what our revenues are. We know what costs are going up against those revenues in here and in our audit. And I know what you're trying to do is you're trying to get this thing to have some type of a positive contribution, which makes sense. And I'm just wondering, given all the debt that's going to roll off, are we okay with the proposed rate increase? That's all. Is the number right? The percentage right? We can't control the revenues. They are what they are. They come in.
Again, I haven't worked very closely, but I've been working with the engineers on this. So yes, the answer is yes to that from my perspective. I don't know if Troy and I have had the chance to do it. So I'm not sure if he's had a chance to look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
We do need a vote. You want to vote
Yeah,
to increase
I'll
the
make a
rates?
motion that we increase the water rate by 3% and the sewer rate by 2.5% starting in the bill cycle of April 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Next on the agenda is the town report bid.
Mr.
You got
Chairman,
comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, you have in front of you, we received 2 bids, one from Country Press and the other from R.C. Brayshaw and Company. The Brayshaw Company, although they are slightly more money, in Amy's opinion, they're going to be better to work with because they're in town on a weekly basis and they can deliver us a sample copy before we actually accept it to look at the fonts and make sure that everything is clear in what we're looking for.
Okay.
Move to approve the bid from R.C. Brayshaw and Company.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll volunteer to proofread it if you want me to.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Here's our
Okay.
proofer.
Got it.
Next on the agenda is the Josiah Brown Scholarship Awards.
So we've received 5 applications. You have the candidates listed out in front of you, and we're recommending the $1,500 for a total of $7,500 in awards.
Very awesome.
Somebody want to make a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 National news, the impeachment passed, and that's taking place.
Okay, Masonic Temple pilot. Jim, you want to?
If you recall, Mr. Chairman, Masonic Temple came in front of this board a couple months ago looking to have an abatement associated with their taxes. We have spoken with the assessor. The assessor felt that a payment in lieu of taxes was the best way to approach this, and you have the assessed value and his recommendations. And from that, you can do as you wish.
Basically a payment in lieu of taxes. They would be taking their assessment and multiplying it times the town portion of their tax bill. So if we do that, their tax bill will now be $2,161.17.
We should mention that last year we passed a similar resolution.
Well, we have for a lot of other organizations that are very similar to this. So I would make a recommendation that we go into a pilot program with the Masonic Temple.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Okay, do we want to go back up to the warrant articles? Okay. There's the rest of it we could probably do quickly, hopefully, when we're done with this, if we do. Yes, John. What? Sure. 30 seconds, that's what you got.
I want to report that we have raised enough money to begin phase 1 of the project, which is the rehabilitation program. I'll be sitting with the town manager tomorrow to work out the details of where what we need to do for the administration to work. But I just wanted to let you know that phase 1 has been raised, and we're now working on phase 2. So those of you who have been holding off thinking that this isn't going to work, it's going to work. So you may now jump in with both feet. Thank you.
Thank you for your long-term interest in pushing this, too.
Okay, Article A, which is ME2 bucket truck purchase.
So this particular warrant article is for $280,000 for the purpose of purchasing a bucket truck for the use by Municipal Electric Department for general system maintenance, incident response, The amount of $280,000 shall be transferred from the Electrical Enterprise Fund surplus. The expenditure will not result in any increase in the tax rate or electric rate. Some of these warrant articles, I think as we go through them, you'll see that they're fairly standard warrant articles, and we can probably get approval from the Board of Selectmen this evening on. I believe there's other warrant articles that we may need to get more background on. So if we go through these warrant articles, if there's one that you feel is worth getting off the table, I would be interested in entertaining a motion so that we can move these forward.
Okay. Have any questions on Article A?
Yeah, I had written a suggestion. I think bolded should go from 280,000 all the way down to the word truck. So that stands out.
I'm sorry, Linda, can you just repeat that again?
Yeah, it's going to go from 280, and it'll go all the way down until the end of bucket truck. It's just going to say 280,000, and not the words, just the what is in parentheses for the purpose of purchasing a bucket truck. What you're trying to do is get that emphasized easily for people.
Yep.
Okay.
Absent the rewording, or in addition to the rewording, there's
no rewording.
So are we just here to say we like it, let's move it forward? Is that what you're looking for, Jim?
So, and I apologize, the warrant articles that I haven't printed off in front of me, that is bolded. Matt had made those changes as well.
Do you have any copies of the, I mean, I sent a whole bunch in, and if you have copies and you've made the change, then I don't have to go through each one of these and say, want this bolded or unbolded.
I apologize, I did not forward these off to the board. I thought I had, so I do not have these copies.
I'll just make the statements. I'll just say if I want to bold something more, and then I'll meet with him to make sure we're in agreement. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we're not here all night.
We'll be here quite a while if we keep doing that.
Whatever you want to bold, I want to bold too.
Okay, Article B, town road upgrades. Wait a minute. I think we ought to, Article A, we need to either recommend or not recommend tonight, so we don't have to keep coming back.
Move to recommend it.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Article B.
5-0.
Yeah.
Article B, town road upgrades, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $850,000. The following is in bold: $850,000 for the purpose of upgrading town roads and drainage systems. End of bold. The appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32:7, Roman numeral number 6, and shall lapse on December 31st, 2022, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 42.5 cents per 100,000 of assessed value.
Per 1,000.
Per 1,000.
1,000.
Okay.
My only concern is I would like copies of these after they're done. I wrote that on my own copy that need to be added, but I would like a, upgraded copy of all these.
Okay, but I think we ought to go through, as far as we're concerned, I think we ought to recommend it or not recommend it at this point too. So we don't have to keep coming back.
I don't mind that. I just would like us to have the final edition of these.
It's fine.
Subject to
If we
the
see
wording,
any
I
issues, we
recommend
can
we
bring
move
them
it
up at
forward.
another meeting.
That's good.
Okay.
Make a motion to recommend this warrant article.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
5-0.
Hey, Christine, what's it?
Article C, the operating budget, we don't have one yet.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go on to
Article D,
Public Works Vehicle Equipment.
Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $175,000, dollars to be added to the existing Public Works Vehicle and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Said fund shall be under the custody of trustees of the trust funds the selectmen have been designated as agents to expend this capital reserve fund. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 8.8 cents per thousand of assessed value.
Okay, somebody want to make a recommendation to recommend this?
I recommend it. I recommend we adopt it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
I will get with the town manager. I got some bolding I'd like to have done on that one.
Article F, fire trucks and apparatus.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $196,000 to be added to the existing fire truck and apparatus replacement capital reserve fund. Said funds shall be under the custody of the trustees of trust funds. Furthermore, the selectmen have been designated as agents to expend this capital reserve fund. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 9.8 cents per thousand of assessed valuation.
I'll make a motion that we vote to recommend.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Dispatch equipment capital reserve fund.
To see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to the existing dispatch equipment capital reserve fund for the purpose of replacement of the dispatch console or other related equipment, installation, and related expenses. Said fund shall be under the custody of the trustees of trust funds. Furthermore, to authorize the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from this capital reserve fund. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 2.5 cents per 1,000 of assessed value.
Somebody want to recommend?
So move.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of recommending?
Aye.
Aye.
I have some bolding issues. I'll make contact.
I have a question on this one. Does the police commission need to approve this as well?
Yes, it says right down there,
I'm just asking, do they have to approve this as well?
No.
but we've always had them do it.
Is the police commission required to approve this as well? A copy of the minutes would be good. Thank you.
Okay, Article I.
Cary Beach parking lot and beach water quality improvements. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $450,000 for the purpose of parking lot, roadside, and beachfront construction work to be completed in order to reduce stormwater and water quality impacts at Cary Beach. The appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32:7, Roman numeral number 6, and shall lapse on December 31st, 2022, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. This particular warrant article, I believe we need to have a conversation whether or not we should pay for this as an outright cash item or whether or not it should be a financed option. As a cash warrant article, it's going to be 22.5 cents per thousand.
I would like to see it as a bonded warrant article, and it would be 3 cents per thousand for the 10 years that we bonded it over. And I think that's, I don't want to see a big spike in the tax rate one year. We've been working, we've been doing capital reserve accounts, and this is an item that came up. It was an emergency. We did not have time to set up a capital reserve and save for it. And I think for the taxpayer, you know, on a $300,000 house, you're going to add $66 just for that warrant article to the to their taxes. And I think that's just too big of a spike in one year, so I would like to see it bonded.
I don't have a problem with bonding it, but I really don't want to bond it for 10 years. I think 5 years would be enough, personally.
Mr. Chairman, Linda and I have had healthy discussions.
Yeah, we've had differing of opinions.
About the concept of, simple concept is how much debt are we willing to take on as a town? I agree that this appropriation probably should be bonded. First of all, it's small in the total scheme of all the debt we're carrying.
Right.
And so I'm not going to try to be obstreperous about it. But I do believe that we need to have the conversation about how much capital and how much bonding we're going to do in the future. And I think we'll do that. I'd like to propose we do that at some work plan meeting in the future. But it is something that I'm a bit, I shouldn't say concerned, but my eyebrows have gone up when I do some quick calculations. And Troy and I have talked about it. And so I would be supportive of bonding it on a short term, Dave, as you've recommended. I don't think we want to bond this thing for 20 years or 10 years. We want to probably get it off the books.
I don't care how long you do it. I just want it not
Get it in,
cash
get
this
it up.
year.
And I agree with Linda. This one came upon us. It's sad that it did come upon us, but it is here. We have an issue we have to deal with, so we got to deal with it. So I'm okay with this one, but I'm giving up the cigarettes after this one.
Well, Paul, we can keep on arguing about it.
Okay.
Well, I think we need to do it, number one. So I think that if we bond it for the least amount of years, which I feel would be 5,
I think so.
I would recommend or make a motion that we approve this subject to bonding of 5 years.
I'd second that.
I think Troy has his finger up here. I think he'd like to come up here.
I withdraw my second.
I'll hold off till I hear from him.
That's right. Here comes the finance minister.
So, Troy Neff, Finance Director. So the discussion of cash versus financing and trying to weigh that out. First of all, the issue would be under $1 million. The New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank frowns on, and there's a question of whether they would even be accepted with the issue being less than $1 million. They would steer us more to a local community bank for the financing. I started to reach out for price quoting through 3 banks, the Citizens, Meredith Village, and TD Bank. Meredith Village is currently where the betterment bond is, which we structured that for a 10-year time frame. The estimated rate at this point is around 3% for a loan. If you took the cash option, I just want to lay out some numbers for you. You'd have the $450,000 worth of cash that would come out of the general checking account. We generally earn around 1% on that, so that would be a loss of $4,500 worth of interest income. You are correct in the tax rate of 22.5 cents that would hit. If you take the loan option, the $450,000 loan at 3%, you're looking at for a total financing cost of $521,428.09. Assume that you continue to earn 1%, so you can subtract out, on our checking account balance, you can subtract out $5,214.23 worth of that we would, because we'd be earning money on that, on interest on those funds. So you get down to a total cost of $516,213.86. So to finance it would cost the town $61,713.86 in additional costs. However, the plus though with financing this through a local bank versus if you bonded it through the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank, because a bond investor is actually buying an income stream that precludes you from being able to prepay this.
Pay it off.
If you, right, to finance, you pay it off early. If you did finance it through a local bank, you would have the option to prepay this or, pay off the loan early. So I started to look at structure. I know the board started, 5 years, and I certainly will entertain and get whatever research necessary.
Is what you just quoted for how many years?
That's 10 years.
10 years.
That's right. That's because we structured it the same way, just tried to structure it the
That's a
same way
long
we did
time
the betterment bond.
for that short money.
I'm sure we can get it for a shorter period of time. I don't think there's
Yeah.
you can take.
I would like you to, I mean, it sounds like we're going to table this one anyway, but I'd like you to find out for 3 years and 5 years.
Sure.
What that would be. Because I personally, I don't want to go out any more than 5 for this amount of money.
Right. And that's...
That just seems ridiculous to go out more than that.
Right.
And I can understand the tax rate and everything, but, sometimes for this amount of money, we're better off to pay it once. Sure, there might be a slight increase, but next year it's dropping down again. Maybe.
I don't know. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do 5-year bonds through Pop Whalen. We used to turn them over every 5 years and did small projects to get our way through. So I'm good with 5 years, but
Okay, let's get some more information and table this one.
Okay.
Thanks, Troy.
You're welcome.
Building Maintenance Capital Reserve, Article J.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be deposited in the existing Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purposes of making needed repairs and performing needed maintenance to town buildings and facilities. Said fund shall be under the custody of the trustee of trust funds. Furthermore, to authorize the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from this capital reserve fund. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 1.3 cents per thousand of assessed value.
Okay, any questions?
yeah, I have a question. If we bond the Kerry Beach, and that there may be some of these capital reserve accounts that I would like to put more money in this year. So, if this one's down low, I had asked for a list of what was in the capital reserve accounts, so I'd have some way of knowing how much was already there, because we're trying to save for, issues with our buildings. Originally, this was 50, and we cut it to 25, so.
Yeah, and we've got some debits that have to come out of this reserve fund. I have a number, but that is not an accurate number. So I know there's funds that have to come out of this particular account.
Okay, let's table that one then.
Yep.
Do you agree with that? Okay, Article K, Abenaki Ski Capital Reserve Fund.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,750 to be added to the Abenaki Ski Area Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of purchasing or repairing the snowmaking equipment, the groomer, light poles, and mechanical, electrical, and safety equipment related to the Abenaki ski area. Said fund shall be under the custody of the trustees of trust funds. Furthermore, to authorize the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from this capital reserve fund. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 0.8 cents per thousand of assessed value.
I just want to get a okay from the board, because I'm going to be consistently asking for this. I would like to take the written words of the amount, like $16,750, and not bold that, and only bold the numerical number that's in the parentheses. And if everybody's agreed with that, I will make those changes. Anybody have an issue? Okay. I'll then make a motion to recommend this warrant article.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Article L, Public Safety Building Capital Reserve Fund.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be placed in the Public Safety Building Capital Reserve Fund previously established in 2001 for the purpose of acquisition of property, architectural engineering fees, rehabilitation of property, construction or reconstruction of property related to the public safety building. Estimated tax rate impact 2020 is 5 cents per thousand of assessed valuation.
Did we discuss removing the words acquisition of property?
Well, I think that is because that's if it's a capital reserve account, we've bounced back and forth on whether it was going to be an appropriation outright or it was going to be a capital reserve. If it stays as a capital reserve, that's the wording in that capital reserve.
So we can't change the wording without a 2/3 vote?
Right.
No, we can't change it, no.
Okay. And so this presumes that the public safety building is targeted for a vote by the public on 2021? 2022? Okay.
See, my question is whether you're going to use the 100,000 in the year. If we did it as a 2-year appropriation, then we could get rid of the word of acquisition of property, and it be just, and decide whether it's, I thought it was going to be for architecture and engineering
right.
Fees, and maybe for site design or something like that, and not all this capital reserve.
Right.
But on the other hand, part of this, also, if we find a piece of property, how are we going to, what's the word I want? Hold that piece of property in abeyance until we can get the funding, if we don't have the ability to be able to pull out of that.
How much is in the existing capital reserve, Jim?
So right now, there's a balance of 64,000, but most of that is accounted for based on the current contract that'll be finishing up very shortly. So there's really little to no funds in this account.
So Dave, I would go with you if we think that we may be putting down a down payment on acquisition of a piece of property. Other than that, we're going to have to go out on a warrant article for the, you know.
So, yeah, creates
I can tell you, we don't have many choices right now as far as locations.
Yeah.
I'll reiterate for the 27th time that the bank is available for sale in multiple acres right in the center of town for $1 million, and nobody wants to do anything about it, but that's much better than the $10 million proposed for the public safety and fire engine facility that we heard about last year. I think the bank building might not be okay for the fire, but certainly would be okay for the police, and it's strange to me why no one wants to pick up on that.
So here's the dilemma here. If there's an appetite prospectively to put a down payment on a piece of property, and there is a need to do architectural and engineering design, given that what we currently have in the kitty, and given this number, we ain't got enough money.
Correct.
Just, I mean, the math doesn't work. So this either has to get bigger, or we have to limit the language.
I'm with you. I think that's the case. I'm not sure what we plan to do. I think we need to be clear on what we want to do with this money.
Well, I think because of the limitations of where we might be able to go in working with the architect on the plans that we now have, it's limited as to where we can go.
Right.
We should be able to, at least my feeling is, we should be able to have some mechanism to put a down payment on something to hold a piece of property, like we've done in the past, till town meeting, say, next year. Unless we do that, unless we have that flexibility, we're going to be hunting for a long time.
I think, Dave, you're teeing it up. You're saying that's the priority right now, is to have enough liquidity to put some money on a prospective piece of property.
Even if we increase this to $200,000 and have the ability to acquire or put a down payment on a piece of property, we need some funding. As Matt has said, most of the plans and stuff that are now in the works work around, I think, 2 pieces of property. So
I'd be more comfortable with that than what's worded right now. I feel that this, I'm not sure what we were going to do with the money. If we want to be, if we're going to, and we haven't had the study, which is what also it makes it hard for us to do. But if we're looking at also have the possibility of putting a down payment on a piece of property, that should be worded in this warrant article, or we don't have authority to do that.
I think we ought to have that looked at and readdress this before Because we got a few others we're going to have to table and address.
Yeah.
I think this one ought to be looked at as well, because the properties we're looking at, we need to have some way to hold them.
Okay, and then let's reword this to do what we need to do.
Okay.
Well, and if I could, that's going to bring up the next question, and that is, if we do that, do we have enough money, do we have enough capacity to bond right now 11 point whatever the number is? Do we have the capacity to do that? And we ought to have just a simple, yeah, you can, or no, you can't. It ought to be just that simple.
I don't think we're going to be up in that range of number.
Pick a number, pick 10, pick 6. But whatever the number is, give us a range of what we can do so that here's my concern, Mr. Chairman.
We can do that.
We can come up with the operating number here, but if we can't afford to, buy the building, this money is not well spent. That's my point. And so I think a quick, here's what you could afford to spend would be good.
The question. Okay, sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Well, depending on how you word the article, and that's what Linda's saying, we need to reword that.
Yep.
So that we have that capability, though, Paul. Somehow. If we don't, we're looking out another year and a half, and,
If you
looking at something else.
If you go on Paul's, I hear Paul saying is, well, can the town afford to have put significant more debt on the town?
That's the question.
That's his question, and he and I have look at it in two different ways, and I think he's right. We need to have that discussion so we can argue it out and see where all of us are. But I think that this should be tabled, and I think we need to reword this and have we don't have more time to do our argument and then put the warrant article out. And so I haven't seen it if they're looking at two pieces of property, if we say and we need to have some kind of idea when we're going to get the taxpayers to support
It's been a few years, too, since we've looked at our debt service and what's coming off and what's...
Yeah, it's a difference in philosophy.
Yep. Okay. Water quality improvements.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $55,000 for the purpose of providing matching funds for cyanobacteria activities, $15,000 Rust Pond Stormwater BMP Design Dredging Survey, $20,000 a New Hampshire DES Section 319 grant for the Lake Wentworth Watershed Phase 4, $20,000 for watershed education and outreach and water quality testing. The appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32:7, Roman numeral number 6, and shall lapse on December 31st, 2020, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 2.8 cents per thousand of assessed valuation.
2 or 3? 2.8, Jim?
Impact was again?
Be 0.28.
0.28, okay.
That's different than mine.
I think we found it. 2021.
This is 2022. Right. So it's only a 2-year. Gotcha. But isn't there wording that has to go in there if we do that? It should have the same wording as B town roads. Appropriation is non-elapsing pursuant to, which was what town attorney told us.
The appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to and shall lapse on December 31.
Okay, you put that in.
Yeah.
It's different than what's on here, Linda.
Yeah, I was still looking at, we put the 24, the Rust Pond survey. All right, I'm okay.
Okay.
Because the education kind of got stuck at the end with no money.
I move that we move this along and support it.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye. 5-0.
Hey, ASME contract agreement?
We need to table that.
Okay.
Table.
Okay. Whiteface Mountain Conservation Easement.
See if the town will vote to place a conservation easement on town-owned portion of Whiteface Mountain, TM number 36/1, see deed recorded book 3051, page 087, with said easement to be held by the Lakes Region Conservation Trust. There's no tax impact.
Jim, I don't have my Mr. Puffer notes. Is this one that Mark said we don't need to vote on because it's not an appropriation?
You don't have to, I think.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I think you're right.
You're correct.
So we don't need to vote on it
We don't have to.
because it's not an appropriation.
That's correct.
Okay. So we can delete.
I think if we vote on it, then voters will at least see that we approved of it.
Well, we don't need to, though, David.
No, we don't need to vote on it because it's not an appropriation. At least I may be wrong, but I thought that's what Mark Puffer's advice was.
I thought so.
I'll go look for Mark Puffer's.
Clarification.
Maybe just take it out.
You may, but it's not required.
Yeah, that was my understanding, yeah.
You want to recommend it then? We want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend it.
David, you going to second?
What is the motion?
To recommend.
Yes. Second.
Okay, all's in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I'm going to abstain. I don't think we have to, and
I'll
we're going
abstain.
to have others. And I do have a thing from Mark Puffer said the Board of Selectmen budget votes may, but do not have to appear on the warrant. This is not an appropriation warrant article.
Okay. Well, if we don't have to, Jim can bring that back to us. Okay, recreational dock repairs.
I don't know what we just did.
See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $400,000 for the purpose of reconstructing and upgrading finger docks A through D per the town docks asset management plan performed by Ty and Bond engineers. $170,000 of the balance of $400,000 will be raised via general taxation and placed into the dockside capital reserve, of which the Board of Selectmen are agents to expend. The Selectmen are thereafter authorized to withdraw $270,000 from the dockside docks capital reserve fund for this purpose. The remaining balance of the $400,000 will be offset by $130,000 of grant funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Tier 1 Boat Infrastructure Grant Big Fund through the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Said funds required to be raised by taxation will be $170,000. The appropriation is non-lapsing pursuant to RSA 32:7, Roman numeral 6, and shall lapse on December 31st, 2022, or upon completion of the project, whichever occurs first. Estimated tax impact 2020 is 8.5 cents per thousand of assessed valuation.
Isn't that supposed to be 2021 again?
Yep.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
Well, but I think also Mark Puffer said it was $402
Worth $400,002.
to do, yes,
We're going
$402.
to find the $2.
So the $2 needs,
That's right.
that's what he said it added up to.
So the real appropriation is $400,000. When you added up all the documentation, it came to $400,002. So we have to go eliminate $2, but we should vote on the $400,000. Is that kind of the way to do it?
I think that's true. Something, we got to
Move
make
that we
it add up.
move it along at $400,000.
Okay. Somebody second that?
Was I right, Linda? Did I get that wrong?
No, we can have Jim check on it for sure.
We
All
can-
those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Living Museum renovation and expansion. We're going to table that one. We don't have all the numbers for
Yep,
that.
I believe that we should table this one.
Okay, Article R, Bridge Falls Path Lighting Capital Reserve Account.
See if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to establish a Bridge Falls Path Lighting Capital Reserve for the purpose of replacement of the existing light poles along Bridge Falls Path from Center Street to Foster. Said funds shall be under the custody of the trustees of trust funds. Furthermore, to authorize the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from this capital reserve fund. Estimated tax rate impact 2020 is 1 cent per thousand of assessed value.
Any further discussion? Somebody want a motion to recommend?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Water Department backhoe.
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $120,000 for the purpose of purchasing a backhoe for use by the Water Department for general services. The amount of $120,000 shall be transferred from water fund surplus. The expenditure will not result in any increase in the tax rate or water rate. Estimated tax rate impact, 0.
That's an easy one.
All right.
Vote to recommend.
Second.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, I'm assuming that if we're getting a new backhoe, we're trading one in or moving one somewhere else?
The intent on this particular article is the current water department backhoe will go to solid waste, and the solid waste backhoe will be
Retired.
Okay. Article T, accrued leave, time expendable trust fund.
To see if the town will raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to establish an accrued leave expendable trust fund per RSA 31:19 lowercase a to cover costs of unused earned time for union and non-union employees upon voluntary or involuntary separation from employment or retirement. Said fund shall be under the custody of the trustees of trust funds. Furthermore, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. Estimated tax rate impact is 5 cents per thousand of assessed valuation. And this would be creating a new account.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So, Jim, you've done a quick assessment of the situation, and you think that this 100,000 is adequate at the moment?
I believe it is an excellent start.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Move to recommend.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. Okay. Article U, police vehicle purchase by police detail fund surplus. That sounds complicated.
I would just put police vehicle purchase, and the small amount is coming from the police special detail, and that is explained in the warrant article. I think the main item here is that we want to purchase a police vehicle. We're asking for $46,000. We're only going to get 13 out of the revolving fund. Or the
So it's costing us $46,255.
Right. Right.
So
I think I agree with Linda. I think that we could take off the second half of the title.
Yeah.
Consider it done.
I have two questions, and just to check the box, Police Commission has voted it in? Yes, sir. Thank you. And the second is, and I think I saw that, Chief, you provided to Jim the standard model, so now we have on the record what a cruiser kit looks like. Thank you, sir. Okay.
The article reads, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $59,255 to purchase a new police cruiser and ancillary cruiser equipment. Said appropriation to be offset by $13,000 which represents a portion of accumulated revenues in the Special Police Detail Revolving Fund created by Article 23 in 2006, which is accumulated from several details in prior years, and $46,255 from general taxation. Additionally, to dispose of an existing cruiser by sale, auction, trade, or dispose, whichever is in the best interest of the town, and any said funds from such sale be deposited into the town's general fund. Estimated tax rate impact for 2020 is 2.3 cents per thousand of assessed valuation.
Recommend to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Article B, municipal.
I've got more work to do on this. I've got a
Move to table.
conference call tomorrow.
Okay, so time correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go back to the recreational docks. And if
Which?
it's P, because I don't think it adds up the sum. So if I add 170, I add 270 and 130, I get 470. Did something wrong with my math?
Math is a stubborn thing. Numbers are tough to dispute.
What do you come up with?
I haven't done it.
Oh, well, hurry up. Am I adding wrong, or?
Michelle has 570.
Sure.
That's 570.
Help us out, Matt.
Matt, bail us out, will you?
So ignore the $2,000 issue, but the idea here is that you appropriate the full $400,000 for the project. $170,000 will be raised via general taxation and transferred into the capital reserve account. At that time, the selectmen can then expend the full balance of what exists in there, which is $270,000 after that transfer, plus the $130,000 from the grant, therefore adding up to $400,000.
So we're asking for the 400 in the event that the big grant doesn't materialize?
That's exactly right.
So if the big grant doesn't show up,
After acquisition, everything.
Wait a second. We're transferring it into the capital reserve account?
That's correct. And we made that adjustment after the last discussion because we felt that if the grant failed, we didn't want to, we had made it conditional initially. We felt that if the grant failed, we didn't want to then lose the appropriation so that we could then seek the grant in the next year.
I think what the problem, okay, where I'm having the trouble is if I was a taxpayer and I added up all, I'd come to 470, because I wouldn't know that you're going to then deposit it and then you're going to take, which is crazy, you're going to take the money, you're going to deposit it in, and then you're going to say, oh, by the way, we're going to take that out. And you get all confused in what the heck you were doing. So there's something we've got to do. We've got to clean up this language.
Yeah, again, I think we had this in a related issue, Matt, about, and Linda, and thank you for clarifying this. Capital reserves are not for in-outs. Capital reserves are for wait a period of time out. I think there's some rules about that. I think we spoke to that on the December 4th minutes. There was another issue that was brought up. So it's a wording issue, I think, Matt.
Yeah,
I would agree with you 99% of the time, except when you're making a project contingent upon a grant. And because we are doing that here, if the grant does not get approved, then we either need to make it a multiple year appropriation, or you need to put it into a capital reserve account to protect it into the future.
I think we talked about, can't you make an outlay?
Yeah, I think you take it out of this warrant article that you're going to put it in a capital reserve account, and you do something like this to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $170,000 to be added to the existing capital dock repair capital reserve account. Said fund should be under the custody of the trustees of trust fund. The selectmen are designated as the agent to expend this capital reserve. If this article will be null and void if warrant article, the one above, fails. So that allows you to take, if this one fails, then you will take that money and put it into the capital reserve. So this the first article should be just, we're going to spend $170,000 on that dock. If that fails, then you have another warrant article that said if that one fails, we'll take that $170 and put it in the capital reserve account, still saving for doing it another year.
So I do understand that, but in my opinion, that is more complicated than what's proposed here. But I understand different people will read it different ways, but I'm happy to do whatever the board wants, but we felt this accomplished the purpose.
You know, it doesn't do it for me in wording. I will like to change my vote.
Well, what do you want to do? Let's make a decision. I don't have any problems with it because you need $400,000. David?
We have a member of the...
One thing this is a multi-year project. If you look in the backup, this is we have other phases to go on. Sure. So the idea of the cap reserve, I understand it's odd to be putting money in and taking it back up. And again, remember, we're doing off a cost estimate. I don't have this exact dollar amount, So we have a budget to do phase one. If the grant does not come through, we still would have 170 plus 100,000, so we still could get going on some of the docks. The docks are in tough shape. We've got to start repairing them, whether we get the grant or not. So I think the idea of keeping the cap reserve fund, so the money we don't spend stays there and continues. Next year, we're going to be back for more money to do the next phase.
Well, why didn't you just say that you want to raise $170,000? We're the agent to expend. You don't need that in this warrant article.
What we need is the grant. So we got to cover the grant. And we figured we'd talk about the total project of this phase. So we can do it any way you want. You're right.
I mean, if the grant doesn't come, we will have $170,000 allocated for the recreational docks. And then we can take whatever we need out of our capital reserve account for agents to expend. Because what you're telling me, if we don't get that grant, you want to spend this $170,000 plus what's in the capital reserve account.
We want to move forward with the project, yes. Less than 130.
Yep.
But we don't want to close out the account. We want the money to be there so that, again, we can have control of it. You guys have control of what we do when we do it. Right. We are very hopeful. The feedback's still positive that we're going to get the grant. But I don't want the whole thing to go down if we don't get the grant. And we want it to be, people need to understand we're trying to, again, get as much grant money as possible, but the docks have to get repaired. So I hate to see the project stalled if we don't get the grant money. In any case, we can do whatever we want. We can revisit it also. I think that's not a bad idea.
Revisit.
So you want to have a motion to revisit this one then? Because we
Make
already...
a motion to revisit.
Second.
We're talking Article P.
P, that's correct. The recreational docks and repair.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to revisit C. I, J, L, N, E, Q. Correct?
V. Did you say V? V as well.
Yep, me as well.
Yes.
Yes.
I also did some putting the warrant articles in order, and what I would like to do is, because I have it here tonight, be able to send it to the town manager and have him send it out to all of you so you can look at it, because the next time we are going to have to put them in some kind of order.
Yep. Fine by me.
Okay. Other business?
The other thing I have for other business is at some point we need to set the date for the taping of the warrant articles. And we usually do it around the 15th of January, and we may want to, the 8th is the next time we have a meeting. That seems like it's late for us to try to decide that.
Well, the 14th is the pencils down, right?
Yeah, if possible, I know that this would be tight, but I'd like for the board to consider potentially meeting before the 8th for the purpose of trying to finalize these warrant articles. And the reason is they've got to get to the budget committee for finalization as well. So
on that subject that you just brought up, Jim, so the budget committee is going to get together on the 30th to look at the operating budget, the ups and downs of the operating budget. So that's their schedule, and they have, I may be wrong, but I thought the 2nd was when they were going to be looking at warrant articles.
I'll have to double check with Leanne, but I thought they were going to cancel the meeting on the 2nd in interest of going to the 6th. And if that was the case,
Monday the 6th? Okay, well.
If that's the case, I would recommend that we try to convene on January 2nd. And I can confirm that with Leanne.
Well, we have to get those done before the budget committee takes a, so.
Correct.
I think so.
They have to move out one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a hard stop then on the 2nd for warrant articles. All written, all in, all numbers.
They have to be.
Okay.
And we should have a date in which drafts, the final drafts come out to us. I found it hard. I've made and asked for some changes, and you're looking at wording that's not what you're looking at, and it's hard for you to make some good decisions on stuff.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So you want to meet January 2nd at 6 o'clock?
Sure. And that's only going to be for warrant articles, we presume, right?
Could we meet at 6:30?
6:30 would be better.
Okay, 6:30.
And Jim, you're just going to make sure that our budget committee knows that we're not going to visit with them that day?
Yep.
Okay. Good. And we'll confirm that they're going to look at the warrant articles the following Monday.
Yeah, I'll get that clarified with Leanne.
Okay. And just again, for the pleasure of the board, they're going after the operating budget on the 30th.
This is the last day we have to as well post a public hearing for bond is January 14th.
Right.
So.
Okay, does anybody have any committee reports?
I do. I have one thing I want to, it's on other business. I have all flyers. Last night, Wolfeboro, up there in community television. We've got last night Wolfeboro flyers. We're ready to go. We're going to have General Wolf going to join us. It's going to be a day full of fun, and I hope a lot of people come out.
Go, Linda Murray.
Okay, anybody have anything else on committee reports?
Route 28 committee, the expand, I think, Linda, you were at that one too, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah. Route 28 committee kicked off the next tranche. We have, I've been seeing the budgets in stereo. I get to go to the budget committee meeting with Linda and listen to our folks. We had a end of year cyanobacteria education team meeting, wrapped that up. And the fun part was a wonderful Christmas party and Festival of Trees, which was actually pretty cool as well. Thank you. David?
I started with Wolfeboro Community TV, a series of programs about the history of, illustrated history of Wolfeboro, which will be running soon.
And I went to the Chamber Quarterly meeting, the Route 28, with Paul, and joined him at some of the Budget Committee hearings, and I also had a meeting with the Friends of Pop Whalen.
I had, last week, had Friends of Libby Museum, spoke about the fundraising. I'll get into that when we get into that warrant article on January 2nd. Board We also had a technical committee meeting for the Live Museum there with Jim, myself, Alana, and Julie, and Alan Harding. And last night we had a planning board hearing where we went over all the warrant articles for the planning board's going to be presenting for the warrant.
Mr. Chairman, I had one other that I'd report. Last week on the 12th, we had, 50 people sitting here in the room. We had members of every select board from the entire county sitting here. Senator Bradley was here, and this was the Carroll County Broadband Committee meeting. We received a presentation from Consolidated Communications, which is common to all of us. And the presentation was their ambition, their desire to prospectively be a fiber provider for all of us, which was a good thing to hear. But Wolfeboro, the Great Hall, was the host location, and our community TV people did, as usual, a super job.
Town Manager's report.
As has been stated, the budget process, multiple meetings with the Budget Committee, a couple of items that you need to be aware of. Solid Waste came in and they had provided a memo to the Budget Committee. They ended up having to increase a line item within their budget under consultants from $13,500 to $23,100, and that is for monitoring wells for PFOAs.
PFAS.
It's a state DES requirement, so that has occurred. The other increase was for household hazardous waste. That budget went from $48,010 to $56,490, and the rationale is usage. The usage is significantly going up, and as a result, there was an increase in that. We also had found an error when we were calculating the budget, and I have a memo here pass out to the board members. It's regarding the calculation for health care. When we calculated health care, it was calculated for a 12-month period, and the calculation should reflect a 6-month increase, not a 12-month increase. So in the general fund, it's a reduction of $79,786. In the water sewer fund, $2,260. MED, $23,968. Top Whalen, $1,447, for a total reduction of $107,467 in the operating budget.
Thanks for catching that. Just to fill in the thing, the Budget Committee received, I think, all of that information, and because there were increases that they were discussed with them, they wanted us to obviously be aware of it, and if we had any issues, they would obviously accede to our wishes.
I think the other thing is we were supposed to have a default budget.
So I have a default budget number for you.
Yep.
The default budget for 2020 right now is $27,886,886. Based on a telephone conversation with Mark Puffer and New Hampshire DRA today, there may be an adjustment to that, and if that occurs, that will have to go back to the Budget Committee. So the current budget with the Budget Committee, general fund is $14,183,617. The water fund, $1,841,532. The electric fund, $10,004,945. Sewer fund, $1,748,171, and Pop Whalen, $238,177, for a total of $28,007,436. A couple of items that I'd like to bring in front of the board tonight for discussion. We've had, as you're aware, a good year with not expending a lot of funds in some of our budgets, one of them being the town manager's line, one of them being some lines within codes department, planning department, ZBA. And as a result, we'd like for the Board of Selectmen to consider the thought of purchasing the codes vehicle, replacement vehicle, out of the 2019 budget. This is a memo outlining where the expenses would come from, and the thought process is if you endorse this, we will execute the purchase of the vehicle in 2019, and there will be no capital outlay request, which would reduce the 2020 budget request by $26,054.
So the facts are that we need to purchase a car. It's not a debatable item, right?
I don't feel it's a debatable item. I don't think the codes officer should be out there in their personal vehicle. The vehicle has not got a lot of miles on it, but it is 10 years of age. And we've done some research, and we found a vehicle that was actually cheaper than what we're proposing right now, but the vehicle was sold. That's what happens. So we were able to find something through the state bid process, and it still falls within the range of the account balances that we have proposed in front of you.
You need a motion?
I don't think so. I just would like an endorsement from the board that this is a good practice.
Fine with me.
Fine to me.
Fine with me.
Okay.
We will
Go get that Yugo.
we'll work on getting that done. I also have a second one here for the board to consider. As you're aware, there's a proposal for upgrading the Wolfeboro Community TV equipment. They were awarded a grant, so the request for that appropriation has reduced from $32,000 and some change to $19,932. Again, we've got significant funds left in the town manager's line, and this is what this spreadsheet lays out for you, how those expenses would be covered. And again, if this were to be approved, we would destroy the capital outlay request for 2019, and we'd observe a reduction. Those two reductions within the 2020 budget would be for $45,986 if you endorsed both of these reductions.
Sounds good to me.
In 2019.
Fine with me.
I think for the, and again, you said it earlier, Jim, but for the benefit of those who watch on television, this is an extraordinary situation where these extra dollars are available.
Correct.
This is not something that, and you guys have been at this longer than I have, but I didn't think we packed the budget last year so that we could have a little cushion. I think we put as much into the budget as we felt was necessary given the turnover we had and other things that went on. And it's good that we now have this and we can now relieve some pressure on the taxpayer for 2020.
Yeah, and I think that's important on 2020 because that is also the year we're going to reassess, and there are going to be some people who are going to have it.
Not happy.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jim?
One last item I had sent in my weekly report to you guys regards to the All Saints Church and how we had moved the welfare department out of there, and we previously were plowing that parking lot. We're out of there. We're no longer plowing that. I've received 2 letters that are requesting that we reconsider the thought of plowing. I think we need to stand fast on where we're at. We're no longer there, and I don't feel that we should be plowing that, because if we do, we're going to open it up for everything else.
I think it's a good decision.
Same with, I think it's,
Sounds good to me.
I think that's what the law says.
Any questions from the press?
She's already left.
Press left.
Public input limited to 3 minutes. Yes.
Earlier, we had asked about the creation of the Warmth and More Fund and the creation of a Y, and you didn't vote on that. Is that?
We will
it's in your
put that on for revisit for the next meeting.
Oh, because I thought we were putting it out as a warrant article.
We are.
Right, but did you approve that it would come from the selectmen?
It'll
Because
go-
you didn't
it'll-
vote on it
It'll go on to the warrant.
as endorsed
That's
by the
what I
selectmen?
had said.
Oh,
We
great.
put it on the warrant. That was all, and everybody agreed. We didn't take a
Okay,
vote
great.
on it.
Okay, I thought there needed to be a vote. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
You may not have to come back.
Suzanne Ryan.
Good evening.
This is regarding the Albee Beach citizens warrant article. We were graciously, Michael Horter and myself, invited to go to the Economic Development Commission meeting yesterday morning.
Correct.
Yesterday morning.
Yes, it was.
And not only they, but citizens have asked me, I imagine they've asked Michael too, how is this going to be implemented should it pass? And our boilerplate answer is, well, that will be in the hands of the Board of Selectmen. But to give you some guidance, should it pass, I have some draft town ordinances for beach control, and I'd like to give those to you, give you a couple weeks to think about them, and I will see you, if the good Lord willing, in a couple of weeks and get some feedback from you, because obviously I'm looking for some support. Now, I know you don't have to put recommendations on these types of articles as you discussed with the one for whiteface. I'm not asking for that, but I'm asking for some sort of show of support at the deliberative session. So this should help alleviate some of that question about, well, how do we implement, who enforces, what's this ordinance going to look like? Have you got any ideas about it? Well, I think this will help you. And it's also including the voted ordinance that the town had in 1990. So I'd like to pass one out to all of you.
Do you have an extra one for
What's that?
Christine?
If I have one left over. otherwise-
You can have my copy. Yeah, we'll get a copy too.
Double up here. But that's it in a nutshell for me.
Okay.
Cool as hell.
Thank you. All right, somebody want to make a motion to go into non-public?
Yes,
Yes.
I got one for you, David.